Thank you for coming. I'd like to remind everyone to please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Tonight's board meeting is being live streamed on Ukiah Unified's YouTube channel. The link is accessible on our website. Please, trustees, if you would have your microphones on for that reason. If someone would like to address the board, please fill out a public comment form. And right now we have several public comments for items that are not on the agenda, which we'll take at the beginning of the meeting. And then we have one for an agendized item, which we'll take at the time of the item. So you have 5 minutes for each speaker. If you want to take less than that, you are welcome to. We have 15 minutes total we usually take for items for public comment, but we can go over if we need to. So with that, would you please stand for the flag salute? Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reporting out from closed session.
On item B1, the board acted to authorize the district superintendent or designee to notify 7 full-time equivalent temporary certificated employees pursuant to Education Code Section 44954A that they will not be reemployed for the 18-19 school year. That was a roll call vote that was unanimous. Also on item B1, in closed session, by roll call vote, the board took action to adopt resolution number 17 to non-reelect 1 probationary teacher for the 18-19 school year. The vote was 6-0, roll call vote. On item B7, the board took action to approve a leave of absence request for a certificated employee for the 18-19 school year. That was approved 6-0 via roll call vote. And on item B2, the board took action to deny the claim against Ukiah Unified School District, and that was also approved 6-0 via roll call vote.
Is that it? That's it? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now our student advisory report. Alexis.
Okay, so a couple weeks ago, for the first time, Ukiah High School celebrated FFA Week. And in doing so, every day at lunch, we had activities that included a hay bucking contest, a petting zoo, Ag Olympics, because it was during the Olympic season, and Kiss the Pig was at the end of the week.
Oh, fun.
And over the course of the week, teachers had literally piggy banks, and students could put money in there, and the teacher who had the most money at the end of the week also got to kiss a pig. And so, yeah, that was really interesting. And then last weekend, we had Midnight Madness, which was that March Madness style basketball tournament with teachers and students. And a lot of teams participated, and it was the second year that we've done it. And there was just a lot of school spirit, and so it was a really fun activity for the school. Next Wednesday, we have a Clubs Day planned. It did have to get postponed because of the weather, but next week it should be fine. Tomorrow, the high school is having an anti-drug assembly to educate students on the dangers of drugs. And AP season is coming up, and so students are registering for their tests. And spring sports are starting up now that the winter sports have ended. The sophomores are planning a talent show that will take place later this month, I believe. And the juniors are now starting to plan prom, which is in April. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Any comments, questions?
I would just like to say congratulations
to our student rep, Lexa, who's been accepted to Cal Poly.
Congratulations. You must like that, fellow Aggies. Next, we have public comment for items not on the agenda, and I just need to remind you, you have 5 minutes for public comment. We ask that you please state your name clearly when you address the board. Nicole Glenser will set the timer for 5 minutes. If you've not completed your comment when the timer rings, we'd like you to please stop. And you may leave any written document you have with the executive assistant, that would be Debbie, for the board's information. Speakers are cautioned that under California law, no person is immune from liability for making intentionally false or defamatory comments regarding any person simply because those comments are made at a public meeting. So the first person is Kenzie White. Hi. If you please speak into the microphone up here, so right there. Make sure it's on.
Hello, my name is Kenzie White.
Jason, you going to fix that? Jason. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Kenzie White, and we as parents of boys in the Ukiah High basketball program have come to the board meeting tonight to express our concern of something we all just learned about last night. We learned that they fired the boys' varsity coach and hired Dwayne Nelson for the program. This was the first time any of us officially heard that the varsity position was even available. What we are concerned about is how did this decision come about? We have learned that when a coaching position be made available, any and all applicants can apply. Protocol wasn't followed for this process. We have learned that protocol states that the position must be made available for faculty first and then current coaches and others to apply. There were 3 obvious eager applicants that weren't even allowed to put their hat in the ring. Kevin being one of them, our current 13-1 JV coach, wasn't even given an opportunity to apply for the position, even after many players and parents went individually to the athletic director, Ty Inez, expressing that they couldn't be happier with the season Kevin and his team have produced. I could sit here and praise Kevin as a coach all day long, as well as all of these players and parents could do the same, but ultimately what we are fighting for is that the Ukiah High School does what is right and reopen the application process to all applicants for this program and will let the decision go to panel. My personal hope is that the board decides to open back up the application process to give me an opportunity to go on and on as to what Kevin Bonner has done, not only for this JV program, but what he has done for these boys individually. But honestly, if you give his application a look, the proof is in the pudding.
Thank you very much. Melissa Hanley. And next will be Andres Orozco.
Hi, my name is Melissa Hanley. My grandson plays on the JV team of Ukiah Unified School District basketball team. And I just wanted to say I agree with what she just said, everything that she had just said. Protocol wasn't followed. I think it's unfair to not let Kevin or anybody else have a chance to be the coach for the varsity team. He did an awesome job and has really helped boys grow as people and as players. And I feel that he deserves the chance.
Thank you very much. Andres Orozco, and the next will be Ashley Perez.
Hi, my name is Andres Orozco, and I'm here to speak about Coach Kev Bonner, about being the varsity head coach basketball. And I believe that he should be the coach because he's taught us many life lessons, not on the court but off the court too. And he's done so much to help us improve as people and players. And I just want him to be the coach for us and for the players that want to try out.
Thank you very much. Ashley Perez, and the next will be Peter Barrett.
Hi, I'm Ashley Perez. I also learned that protocol wasn't followed, and I'm just going to say a few things that I feel Kevin deserves a fair fighting chance. He really did an awesome job coaching these boys. My son has struggled in school. Last year he was not allowed to play because he didn't make grades, and this year he has made a 3.0 all year long. And I feel like there's rules and regulations set in place, and if Kevin doesn't get a chance, then what are we showing these students and these boys if we're not following rules and regulations?
Thank you. So I think the rest of them are on a different subject. I would like to recommend that we have a complaint procedure and that you make sure you contact HR. That would be Nicole's department for that. It's also a little awkward that we can't have a dialogue with you because it's not on the agenda, but we do hear you. We're just not going to respond up here, and I apologize at how awkward that is. Okay. I'm sure she will, yes. Okay, our next is Peter Barrett.
Good evening. My name is Peter Barrett. For those who don't know me, I'm no relation to Ms. Barrett. Just wanted to clarify that. Like many of us around the country, the recent shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, was a stunning reminder of the serious problem we have in this nation with repeated school shootings that have taken the lives of hundreds of our children. I've been watching in awe and with pride those students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas as they've stood up one by one and said, enough is enough. They've been calling out their legislators and other political leaders. They've been speaking their truth with determination. They've been a shining example of what our democracy is all about. Recently, I've had the good fortune to meet several students from Ukiah High that are ready to take action, to speak to whomever will listen. They're taking the lead in organizing the school walkout on March 14th. They'll be joining students from more than 100 other cities around the country for the National March for Our Lives. That event will happen here in Ukiah on Saturday, March 24th. We invite everyone here to join us on that day for that march. It'll be held in Alex Thomas Plaza at 11 a.m. We also invite you, Ms. Kubin, to join us if you're able to speak at the event, or someone from the board to speak and address the issue of school gun violence and how the board and other school leaders can put this into place some effective deterrents to ensure that children in this community will be safe from gun violence. If you're unable to attend, I wonder if you'd be able to commit to including some students in a policy and procedures roundtable discussion about the issue. These students deserve to be heard at all levels, not only in the streets for a day or two or three, but also in the classrooms, in board meetings, and at the county, state, and federal level. They won't give up, and neither should we. After all, it's their lives and others that are at risk if nothing significant is done. I want to also show you T-shirts that are now available for anyone to purchase at the march. This one says, I teach, I don't need a gun. For the little ones, America, let's make schools safe again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Kaio Alba, and then next will be Judy Shook.
Hello, my name is Kaio Alba. Thank you, Zoe, for pronouncing that properly. First of all, thank you so much for listening to my concerns, and I would also like to extend a special thank you to Deb Cuban and the school district for proactively notifying the parents and the community members of UUSD about plans for school shooter drills and what we can expect and things that we should discuss with our kids. Sorry. I'm sure that was not an easy email for you to write. I have children at both Pomalita Middle School and Grace Hudson Language Academy, and my husband works at Eagle Peak. I'm sorry. I have serious concerns about the openness of the campuses in this community. I realize fully that many of the schools where students were killed were more secure and that didn't completely fix it, but I do believe that would be a deterrent. And I would like to know if the school board has a plan or is planning to discuss ways to make our community campuses less open and more secure. My children are scared. My son is scared that he's going to come to school and his teacher's going to have a gun and that somebody's going to take that gun. He's scared that what if a shooter comes and the teacher has to leave him? Who's going to look after them? I know that you guys, everybody here, like me, does not want this for our small children. We don't want it for anybody. So I'd like to have some more information from the school board about what the plans might be. And additionally, I watched the video for the run, hide, fight. And I have serious concerns about how something like that could be implemented, especially in the lower grades. You know, because one of the things I don't know if anybody else watched it, but one of the things that they say is that you should run if you feel that that's the best thing to do, even if other people tell you not to. So I would like more information about how that is being implemented, especially for the grade school kids, many of whom are really scared. And I have researched that there are some other programs out there. I'm just wondering if at some point the school district or the school board could also address how the decision was made to use that particular training model. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Judy Shuck.
Hello, Superintendent Kubin and school board members. I'm Pastor Judy Shook from the Ukiah United Methodist Church, and I here am also talking about gun safety in our schools. I would appreciate if the school board would consider having a panel, as Peter Barrett mentioned, and I've forgotten your name. It was difficult to pronounce, but thank you. Thank you for the suggestions of reviewing policy and sharing that information with community and parents, as well as I'm sure you're working hard and doing many things on this already. A safety panel from the community with some students involved would be greatly appreciated. I think that there are many things that we all want to do to provide safety, not only for our students, but for our teachers. And as community members, we would like to support you in that safety. I would appreciate any community conversations, participation in the march for the Students' March on March 24th. It's hard to say March in March. The March in March, and there also, Peter forgot to mention the school walkout on April 20th. Just letting you know, for you who are involved and aware of the students' walkout, on April 20th we will have nonviolent trained monitors to walk with the students and be with them during that time, as well as at the plaza for that event on March 24th. So we appreciate any conversation and work you're able to do in this gun safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you all for coming and for speaking. It's always really wonderful to have community members here, and we really appreciate hearing from you, even though we may not be responding. Next is employee organizations. First is CSEA. Oh, Stephanie. Filling in for Lisa.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent. CSEA is having an annual CSEA event on May 18th this year. Last year we did a barbecue to honor all of our CSEA members, and I think we're going to do something similar, and we'll have more information on that and after our next meeting. Our chapter's entire executive board will be attending the officers training at Windsor High School this Saturday. We're looking forward to this training to allow us to gain skills we may use to better assist our members. Also, we held our first negotiations of the 2018-19 school year last week. We feel that it was very productive, and we appreciate the district's negotiation team. We're looking forward to our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is UTA. Terry?
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Kubin. Members of UTA are very saddened by the sudden
passing of one of our colleagues, Patty Moore. We send our condolences to Patty and her family, her friends, and the Oak Manor staff. On the issue of gun violence, I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but because it has come up, I do want the audience and the board to know that CTA and UTA are both in agreement with NEA that teachers should not be armed. We don't believe that having more guns in school is a good idea. And we also are in agreement about having the district and the board have something that is united to let teachers know what we should do. We understand that showing the run, hide, fight video may have been a start, but it's not the answer. UTA passed our bylaws this last Tuesday at our rep council meeting. We're very happy to finally have that in the past. We do have a question for the board and the district about a very urgent issue that we think is because of our political climate. We want to know what the district is doing for our immigrant families, as we call ourselves a sanctuary district. The reason I ask is because children of our immigrant families are traumatized by the current political climate. There was a young lady at one of our schools the other day who was crying, and when I asked her why she was crying, she said, because my mom talked to me last night about what we're going to do when the police come and arrest her, and I don't know where I'm going to go. So this is a real issue for our children. They are traumatized, and we know that traumatized children can't learn. And UTA would like to know what is being done when we call ourselves a sanctuary district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our leadership team report. Christy Petrangeli-Smith.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Kubit. I'm honored to be here tonight to share with you a report out for representing our leadership team. Thank you. Tara, I know which one I'm going to put. Oh, that one, okay. So from a leadership update at our last leadership meeting we had last month, we participated in a process called a cycle of inquiry where we asked, we did an exercise called the 5 Whys. And we had just looked at some of our district-wide and site-specific data on attendance and student behavior. And the process, we paired up and worked through this process that you ask 5 whys and try to get into a deeper understanding of the issue, whatever the issue is. And personally, I love this process because it really helps you by asking the why questions on the issue, getting deeper into what might be then the root cause as a bottom line outcome of that process. So we did that, and each site reported out, and through putting up some sticky notes, sharing out the kind of the process of what then did you come to as a conclusion and a site for a possible response to the issue that we were looking at in our attendance data. Then later in the afternoon, we focused on our strategic planning. We did some brainstorming and charted different ideas that talked and focused on how to enhance our current programs in the 4 focus areas of math, literacy, attendance, and student behavior. So to share with you some academic achievement for both the schools that I oversee, first for UISA, we are now enjoying daily math tutoring in our educational center for our students, and it's well attended. We were offering 2 times a week last semester, so we were happy to bring on some Ukiah High School tutors, and they come in throughout the week and help us with that. At this point in the school year, we have 9 seniors that have graduated from UISA. We're celebrating through the monthly attendance incentive funding that the district is supporting sites with. We experienced 2 months of an increase in our attendance, and we were excited with that incentive funding. We're going to be using it on a school landscaping project that we've started. We finished our second interim assessments in January, and are beginning our discussions to focus on assigning the CASP practice tests to our students for the month of March, as well as the third interim assessments for ELA and math. And today we had a positive attendance audit. We're very excited to say we had no findings. That's always fun to say. Yes, very, very good. Yeah. For the adult school, we just went through a successful COE, stands for Council on Occupational Education, and WASC team visit. It was a positive report out that we received, and we were able to create, for the first time in a few years, a school-wide action plan that we're looking forward to working on in the next few years. Many of our vocational nursing students are sticking around, we call it. We have a half-day instruction on Tuesdays with that group, and many of them are sticking around for some academic support and peer tutoring on Tuesdays. We implemented that just through a few students asking for extra support, and it's fun to see that more students are participating in that. We have increased attendance and enrollment in our ESL class this year in the collaboration with Mendocino College. We took 2 classes last year and consolidated them into one, and are offering another class with Mendocino College's instruction. And we're finding that that was a better way to provide the same service for our students while able to increase the attendance and enrollment of the class. At this point in the school year, the adult school has 17 students who have passed the GED test and 12 high school students who have earned their high school diploma through credits. We are in the process of implementing assessments at our school. Part of this is the new requirements for adult ed through the block grant funding. So these assessments are called CASAs, and they focus on reading and math for the different learners we have. So we began focusing on that just in our ESL classes, and we tested approximately 40 of them last semester, and 5 of the students showed learning gains. It's a new concept for these students because it's a computer adaptive kind of test, and getting them comfortable with that in itself is what we're finding is part of the learning we need to do and work with our students. We also implemented that with our high school diploma students, and then now we're focusing on our UVA population and our correctional facility as the next student groups that we need to do those assessments with. And then lastly, we're very proud to say with our new collaboration in Round Valley, we have 13 students enrolled up there working on their high school diploma, and 1 has graduated so far. So that's pretty exciting. And then for positive school culture, I mentioned the landscaping project a little bit. Just to elaborate more for UISA, we're really excited to start working on the plans to landscape that front area in front of our school. So we're working with Gabe Sherman and making a plan with grounds department support to basically work the soil, put in a drip system, and purchase some tolerant plants and make it more aesthetically pleasing. In addition to that, through the recent district support of collaborative furniture funding, we were able to purchase 2 picnic tables to add to this aesthetically pleasing area, and a bike rack. We have a few students who always ride their bikes. And we purchased tables and chairs for the interior for more small group instruction that's becoming more popular. And then in our educational center, we have on average a daily student interaction. Students come and socialize as well as work on their academic work, on average about 10 students a day. And that's a significant increase from last year. Some of these students are hybrid students that have classes at Ukiah High. Some are students who get dropped off and they might stay for a few hours, work on their schoolwork while waiting for their teacher appointment. So it's a nice blend of middle school and high school age students that are interacting and collaborating. And then lastly, for the adult school, we had our Vocational Nursing Advisory Committee meeting last month, and we received positive feedback from them that was through a survey that we had to do with them for our accreditation. So it was nice to hear some positive feedback from them. And at the end of term 1 for our vocational nursing students, which was December, we administered a survey with them to check in on how we're doing academically, socially, all the issues. We want to make sure we're doing a good job. And from that survey, we were able to see results that validated the students feel safe, they're receiving a fair and equitable education, and it's free from harassment, discrimination, et cetera. we plan to do that survey again at the end of the cohort, which will be December of this year, and double check our data, of course, for improvement, hopefully. Okay? That's all I have to share with you. Any questions?
Trustee Arkin?
You know, I was looking at the Round Valley numbers, which are great. Now, are they coming down here?
No, actually, we hired an instructor that has 2 nights a week in a classroom at Round Valley High School, providing the high school diploma instruction for students up there.
Boy, that's really nice. I was very happy to see that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. Next, we have acceptance of donations. We have a donation from Cold Creek Compost for $1,440 for elementary and middle schools. Life Touch for Oak Manor for a total of $1,795.38. Do we have a motion to approve these donations?
I move acceptance with gratitude. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have, under educational program, approval of expenditure plan for excess supplemental and concentration grant funds. That's you, Keith.
Good evening. As you know, every year we check in on our strategic plan and we look at how many, what funds have been expended for supplemental concentration and what funds we think won't be expended. We've done that this year, and our recommendation for the use of those funds is to put it towards textbooks for next year with our English language arts adoption.
And technology equipment.
And technology equipment, sorry.
And those two things are in line with our strategic plan already. As you'll remember, we've been short over the next several years on our textbook fund, and so this will help us deal with that shortage. And it's within the already things that we're already spending funding on within the strategic plan to help us with our goals. Technology equipment, we have a huge need to replace projectors in the classrooms, so we'll likely focus on a lot of that.
Trustee Nelson?
Katie, what was the, I'm not sure how to say it, the amount of money saved or unspent? What was the unspent money?
We don't have an exact amount right now because we have to, it's hard to project because we still have a lot of staffing costs and supplementals in there. But we're going to go back and look. Right now, at maximum, it would be $900,000, but we think that's probably not quite right. So we're going to go through line by line and really make sure we're estimating that correctly.
And I'll just add, when we budget for supplemental hourly pay, additional work that teachers might do, we always have to budget at the maximum amount, and sometimes they don't do all of those hours. So that's one component.
Trustee Barrett?
Excuse me. Katie, I was wondering with the language arts amount that's going to be spent, will some of that go toward the small books that they're going to use in the classrooms to accompany the language arts adoption?
Yeah, so when we adopt, it'll be an 8-year adoption, and all of the consumable and small book readers come with that adoption. There is one portion of the adoption that does not come with the 8-year adoption, which are the take-home decodable readers. So that's another piece that we would like to be able to look at purchasing as well. The teachers that are piloting who've gotten those materials have said, you know, they've been really valuable. You can still copy them. It's just, you know, they're very small and it's pretty time consuming to make those.
So the small books do come with the adoption, though?
Yes, so the adoption has small group readers.
Right, small
so
group
there
instruction.
are 6 copies. There are different Lexile levels, and then they also come with sets of Reader's Theater. And the Reader's Theater, within the Reader's Theater, they have roles that are leveled by Lexile. So when you're even doing that type of student small groups, it's leveled within the Reader's Theater as well.
Okay, thank you.
Is that you? Okay. couldn't tell, it's in between you two.
Oh, sorry.
Trustee Van Sant.
I don't mean to derail this whole conversation a little bit, but I want to step back for a second. And I might have been spacing out in your first couple sentences, so maybe you already said this, but do these funds need to be spent this year? Is that the issue?
Yes, so as we're getting closer to the full funding of the LCFF funding, we need to expend all the funding, because if we don't, it takes longer for us to get our full funding. So we do want to expend all of that this year.
So the proposal is to actually buy some technology by June 30th and buy
Yes.
English
Yes.
language arts materials?
Our plan for the English language arts adoption is we'll be coming to you in April. Right now, they're on the 30-day display. We brought that to you in February. And so right after approval, we'll start purchasing. So it would get purchased in this fiscal year.
I guess my thought is, I know you're saying $900,000 is the maximum, and it could be less, but you are all pretty conservative with funding, so I suspect it will be something significant. And it's just a lot of money to kind of approve without much detail, and we have a lot of other priorities and other creative ideas, and I'm just a little, just wondering if this is not going through a process we normally go through around making decisions on large sums of money. So I'm just noting that. I'm not sure how my fellow board members feel about it.
A couple of things, Megan. The past several years, we have come to the board with ideas and themes around how we would spend the money. And so we've done it this way in the past. But if we use this money to purchase English language arts materials, we'll be coming back to the board to talk about one-time money. Because if you'll recall, back in December maybe, the board approved our one-time expenditures for textbooks and facilities. And so we likely won't need the one-time money for textbooks that you approve, so we'll probably be coming back to the board for, to figure out the $500,000 that you approve for textbooks, how we might use it otherwise.
So it's a swap out.
Swap out.
It is a swap.
So I think I'd like to make that specific in the motion then. I mean, is
Okay.
this an action item?
Yep. Would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion.
What motion would you like to make?
Well, I'm going to think about it for a second. I move that we accept the recommendation to spend the unspent supplemental concentration grant funds on technology and English language arts adoption, with the understanding that those funds will be swapped out with the already approved one-time money expenditures, and that freed up fund, that portion of freed up funds will come back to the board for discussion. A little awkward, but you got the point? Okay.
Swapped out, very technical.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, yeah, don't go anywhere. You all are welcome to stay for our whole meeting, but if you decide to leave at any point, we will not be offended. So you feel free to leave. We will not, it won't hurt our feelings. Thank you.
Really, we can't believe you wouldn't stay until 10:30 with us.
I mean, come on, we'll be here till 10 at
It's
least.
going to
You
be
guys don't want to stay?
scintillating.
Yeah, doors are open. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, well, now that we've, yeah, you can watch on TV if you're really interested. And it's archived.
Watch us on YouTube.
The next is our strategic plan, action plan, LCAP update input. So we do have a public comment on this, so if the staff wants to introduce the item, and then if there's any clarifying questions, we'll have public comment before discussion.
We have several components to this item, and we will take you through them. At the last meeting, so as you'll recall, we are in the middle of our strategic plan revision, and we are in the process of collecting input from stakeholders regarding any enhanced items or changes. So at the last meeting, the board told us to bring back several items for discussion. So we're going to have that discussion tonight on those items. And then we're also opening it up for anything new that you would like to have us consider related to the strategic plan. We have been engaging people in dialogue around our 4 areas where we see our data is not where we want it to be, which is math, literacy, attendance, and suspensions and expulsions. So we've had a meeting with leadership. We've had a meeting with DAC. I believe we've gone to DCC, yes?
CSEA.
See, we have consulted with CSEA. We have a consult coming up with UTA. Every committee that we have this month, we are engaging people in this process around. We've also done some focus groups with teachers around what they might need in their classrooms to improve student achievement in those areas. So we are in the process of gathering all of that. But before we get into anything, we wanted to share with you a document. If you'll recall, the old LCAP regulations were unclear about the revision process. Each year in the past, prior to this year, each year school districts were required to update and revise the LCAP every single year. The law changed in that we now have a 3-year plan. So we put a document together for the board to just kind of visualize what that might look like, and I wanted to share it with you. And Ian, if you could pull up the document that says strategic plan cycle. Katie and I wanted to put something together that kind of showed that. We're technically in year 1 of our 3-year plan. I think this helps school districts stick with some programs for a 3-year cycle rather than maybe change it every year. So right now we're in year 1 of a 3-year plan. And so we're updating the plan for 1920 and 2021. Nope, 1819 and 1920. And we will not be adding a 3rd year onto our plan this year. If you'll remember, the past several years, we were always adding a 3rd year onto the plan. We're just updating those 2 years in our plan. And then next year, we'll just be updating the plan for 1920. And then because I think it's been 5 years since we have participated in a deeper process around our mission, vision, values, goals, and graduate profile. We have that. Several of you were involved in that process 5 years ago that created the basis for our strategic plan and our goals and our initiatives. We feel like at the end of this 3rd year, we should engage people in that process again to make sure that we're all clear on what our vision is. So in 1920, we would engage people in that deeper strategic planning process. And then during that time, we'd also create the 3-year plan for 2021, 21, 22, and 22, 23. So we're always getting a 3-year plan at the time. So we put this together for the board's thoughts or input, and if you have anything for us, let us know. But it just kind of visualizes what it's going to look like for the next 9 or 10 years in terms of our strategic planning process. And at the end of that, we should write down Deb retires. But so this just kind of gives you an idea of what we might do for a more comprehensive process, when that would happen, and then the idea that we have a 3-year plan. So we're currently in year 1 of that. I appreciated that the state did that because I think if we don't have a 3-year plan, we run the risk of changing things every year, and we don't sit with things long enough. Not that we have done that here, because we have not, but just gives you some big picture thoughts about the strategic planning process. So with that, we also have attached our strategic plan LCAP timeline. And Ian, would you mind pulling that up?
I keep thinking she's saying and I'm like, okay, somehow I'm connected to this. Oh, I'll pull it up.
Oh, Ian, sorry, I will say Ian. So just a reminder on our strategic plan timeline, and remember we still have our LCAP template, which is the state template, which is not very user-friendly. It's 100 and some odd pages. And then we have our strategic plan action plan, which is 37 pages or so. And remember that we cut and paste from our strategic plan, action plan into the LCAP template. Love to someday not have both, but we're still, the state is still not quite as progressive as we are in our process. Just kidding. I shouldn't make jokes.
No, it's not kidding at all.
So I just wanted to remind the board, this is our plan. I was supposed to meet with Ukiah High students today, but due to the work that was needed at Oak Manor today, we canceled. So we will be getting back together with the high school students to get their input on the plan. So just a reminder here of everything that we're going to do. There's lots of opportunity for the board to give us input. And so that's just a reminder. And with that, I wanted to jump into the document that says individual trustee ideas for strategic plan, because at our last meeting, the board members brought up things that they'd maybe like to revisit that are in our current plan and new ideas for the plan. So the staff has put together, Deb, is the grid loaded on there? So we'll get that up. I think at your seats, there is a piece of paper that looks like this. It's a chart, and we'll get that loaded up and on so everybody else can see it. But we put all of the ideas in here in the chart, and then Cabinet had some discussion around what our recommendations would be. So we put all of that into here, but what we'd like to talk about, and I'll just go through it, and then we're going to go back to items that need discussion. So one board idea was to create a reserve for supplemental concentration grant funding. We're doing a little bit more research on that. We think that it's a good concept. We think if the governor's budget proposal goes through, that we will be fully funded next year. So we could potentially create a reserve with these funds. So we're doing some more research on it. We don't recommend that we implement that next year, but that we transition to it in 1920. We'll have discussion about that, though. The science TOSA we brought up at the last meeting. That's an expanded position that it would serve science and the garden and nutrition program. And so on the agenda tonight, we have a draft job description. And we're bringing this forward now because it has staffing implications. So we are recommending right now, because currently there's nothing in the strategic plan for that position. So we're recommending right now that the board approve that and put it in so we can get moving on that position. We also, a board member wanted to revisit the 2 certificated TOSAs. We're going to talk about that in more depth. Our recommendation is to continue the current structure for 1 more year. So we'll talk about that, though. The board asked that we bring back the staffing at Ukiah Independent Study Academy. So we have some recommendations on that. Revisit the behavior specialist at Oak Manor. The recommendation from Cabinet is to continue the current structure. We can talk more about that and why, though. And then on the new items beyond the science TOSA, we thought our recommendation would be to process that with all of the strategic plan revision. We'd go through the process. The board would get ranked information from DAC and leadership like we have done in the past. You don't have to do that, but so we're here to really talk about these pieces of information with the board tonight so we can get some direction on where to head.
So are there any clarifying questions before public comment? Go ahead, public comment. Okay. Andrew Lutsky.
Hi, good evening. It's nice to see you all. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the Ukiah Independent Study Academy, the teachers at our school. So earlier today at lunch, the teachers were presented with a proposal regarding this staffing issue at our school. We want to make clear that we believe that both our student success coordinator and our family liaison perform critical functions at our school. and that cutting those positions does harm to our school. And it does not seem to be necessary in terms of the budget. We also want to stress that we need full-time office presence at our site. In the past, without full-time office presence, we were unable to function effectively. As they do in the other schools in the district, parents, students, and staff should have access to school office personnel during school hours to respond to a variety of needs. Furthermore, we believe not having someone in the office at all times is in fact a safety issue. The safety issue is that the teachers are fully engaged in meetings with their scheduled students, while other students are otherwise unsupervised in our common area. Also, the front doors of our building are unlocked during school hours, and anyone can walk into our facility unannounced, and we would be unaware of their presence. We believe this decision about staffing should be postponed until further discussion can be had regarding our needs. We care about our school, our students and their families, and we, the teachers, would very much like to be included as partners in that discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So, we didn't talk about how we're going to do this.
I know. I have an idea.
I apologize, we didn't talk about how we were going to do this right now, so we're kind of winging it.
Zoe, I think what I want.
Prerogative.
I think what I would propose right now is that we, and then we can go back to the other things, that we have the staff share with the board. We hear from Eagle Peak about the STEM TOSA positions. We have Mr. Stearns here and Katie. And then we have the staff present the concept for Ukiah Independent Study Academy, and we have discussions about those.
Okay.
And then we go back to the others.
Okay, does that sound okay with y'all?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Trustee Van Sant?
That sounds like a fine process. Is this also a moment where we would add additional items?
You could.
Okay.
And maybe we save that for the end.
Sure.
So what we're wanting to know really is, these were individual board member ideas, so we need to know if there's consensus among the board as to whether or not to move things forward into the plan, to process them with the strategic plan, to further develop a proposal to bring back to the board. So before we do all that, we want to make sure on some of the items that there's consensus from the board that you want us to do that work.
So if there are additional items that people want to put on, would you suggest that we wait and put them on at the end and then bring them back next month in the same sort of format, or?
Yes.
Okay, does that sound?
Say that again, sorry.
So if there is additional items you'd like to add, that we do this at the end, and then next month we'll look at them again with a little bit of backup information, perhaps, like the same way we're looking at these now? Okay. Does that sound okay?
Sure. I mean, if there's a way to expedite that as well, I mean, you could.
Well, shall we just?
Shall we see how it goes?
Let's see how it goes.
Okay.
Okay, so Dan and Katie, could you please come up to talk about Eagle Peak and just give us a report on how things are going, what the staff has accomplished with the STEM TOSA periods, and what the work is that still needs to be done?
So we created a completion status report that kind of responds to, thank you, our initial plan for STEM TOSA activities, and I can read it, although I think you have it all in front of you.
Would you like me to?
Dan, they just received it, so if you can kind of give some highlights, what you set out to do, what work you still have to do, that would be really helpful. And remind what the purpose of these TOSA positions were.
The purpose of the TOSA positions are to implement STEM within the core. It's really it's an unusual approach to a STEM school. Usually one would see STEM activities in the electives, or every couple months a field day. We're trying to implement STEM within the actual core classes. That's the primary purpose of the STEM TOSA positions. The TOSA positions, for example, are also in all of the upper grade classes. So another part of the plan, you'll see that under the second bullet point, was to support STEM in 5th grade. It took us a while to get there. It is now full throttle, and there's awesome projects happening in 5th grade. I think one of the reasons for the recommendation for next year is that it is a large task to rethink all of your curriculum, math, science, social studies, language arts, in creative ways, and looking at them with the STEM lens. I'm just kind of reading through the list here. A recent highlight is we had approximately 340 science projects completed by students, which is, to my knowledge, never been done in this county. It's an incredibly high percentage. That includes students with IEPs. It was a huge project. We're sending many students on to county. We think some students will go on to the state level. Took an incredible amount of work using TOSA time to support students who have IEPs, who've never done science projects before and completed science projects. That's a highlight at the bottom. The more technical ends of STEM, which involve robotics, simply just take a lot of work and time to explore and learn and teach and provide professional development. In year one, we've really focused on, as an entire staff, understanding the programming nature of the robots, but there's a second phase, which is the actual building and design. That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of work as well to train folks on that piece.
Also, as we discussed the need for TOSA, we really looked at some of the curricular areas that still needed to happen, and we knew when we did the planning process, we had a 3-year budget, and the TOSA's periods were in there because we really felt like it was going to take that long. So as we looked at the list of duties and tasks that the school's been trying to complete, we don't feel that if we got rid of those positions, that those tasks like the cross-curricular planning would be able to get done. So we're recommending to continue the funding for the TOSA because we really feel like there's still just a lot of work that needs to get done, and we want to make sure that the program is up and running and is working well. So that was our recommendation when we reviewed the tasks. And Dan and I in December had met and discussed, possibly reducing the TOSA time. We also went back and discussed it more with staff. And when we really looked at where we were with the process, we recommend that we continue the TOSA periods because of the work that still needs to be done.
One of the most important pieces upcoming is also a development of our skill set continuum. For example, this year everybody is exploring all things STEM. But for example, early on as you're learning how to program robots, for example, there's a ton of work that needs to be done with geometry and number line and really incorporating a lot of geometry into your math lessons such that when the kids are ready to do the programming, they've got all the mathematics down so that they can launch. And we identified 5th grade as our grade to do that. Because the real goal is we do not want to send students to the high school that, I love STEM, I love science, and it's all fun. We want specific technology skills, if they choose a STEM elective pathway, for example, that they can take, that they actually can build the robot if they put in the time and effort, and are not just excited about robots, let's just say, in a very general fashion, but having the actual skill set and knowing what grade, what skills are taught and when. And right now we're a little bit all over the place. Everybody's exploring. It's our first year. It's an exploratory year. But ultimately you want to build a progression of skills each year so that they're ready for continued STEM opportunities at Ukiah High School. So that's a big project as well that needs to happen upcoming.
Trust, you ready for questions?
Sure.
Or comments? Trustee Van Sant.
I slightly lost track of how much money this costs. So are we, on one of these handouts, it indicates $325,000 to implement the STEM program at Eagle Peak. Is that what we're talking about here, or is that partially what we're talking about?
That's partial.
This year we came, right, that's for this year, and this year it's actually going to be under budget due to salaries and due to transportation. And each year it reduces a little bit. So for example, in year one also, we built a STEM lab in our former computer lab. That took some initial cost. We're going to need another STEM lab next year because we have a STEM classroom in a place. It's not good for a STEM classroom, put it that way. And so we need another classroom. And we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. As you'll see in your budget, I think it's around 20 or 30 for STEM lab conversion. And we will need that for another year because there's enough demand.
Dan, Megan's asking about the 2.0 FTE teacher costs.
Oh.
So let's let Katie, that's okay.
That's okay. The cost for the 2 teachers this year was approximately $160,000, which came in lower than what we projected. We usually estimate teachers at about $90,000, and when they're teachers on special assignment, because they're typically more experienced, we estimate even higher.
Okay.
So that's the cost of those 2 periods this year.
And is that the only additional staffing at Eagle Peak for this program, or is there other additional staffing?
That's it.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Barrett?
Trustee
I guess you're
Bogart?
calling on her, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going in
I was
order.
just wondering, although you said that your STEM program is a little bit different from others, I'm wondering what are the opportunities for partnering with other middle schools across California that are also doing this? Are we taking it, we couldn't possibly be the first out of the gate.
I've done extensive research on this. We're the first out of the gate to really try to implement STEM as much as possible in the core classes. That's where it's very, very unique. One of the reasons why we did that was because we also agreed and came up with a plan that we're still going to offer music. Many STEM schools have just a ton of STEM electives. And so if we have students that want to take music, and yet we're still a STEM school and want to say STEM for all, then we would put STEM in the core classes so that they can still have STEM per se. So that is something that's very, very unusual. And then, of course, if a kid takes an elective or joins a competitive club or whatever, they can kind of add as much onto it as they'd like. It's kind of like a sandwich shop. You have a base level, and then you just keep on piling on for kids that want lots of STEM. But STEM in the core is extremely unusual. I did not encounter a single school that does that. There are schools that do lots of interdisciplinary units, which are awesome. But STEM in the core is unique to Eagle Peak.
That answer.
Can I just add something? There is a school district in Southern California that I've been talking to Dan about that I heard speak at CSBA. And we've talked about going to visit because they've been at it for a long time. And I think their curriculum development might assist us.
Yeah, I was just thinking that and the schools of education, like, have they come to visit? If we're that unique, then they should be interested in us.
We're starting to get a few inquiries.
Well, I think. But year one is really when universities are more interested because they want to be around for the first 3 to 5 years. And usually that ends up helping us way more than it pulls us away from other things, even though it is time consuming.
Trustee Barrett?
A couple of things. I just wanted to clarify. So the salaries for the 2 TOSA positions are not included in the 350,000.
They are.
They are.
They are. Okay,
yes.
that's what I thought it was, but I wasn't sure after that conversation. And one other thing, the reason I brought this up, I have no doubt that the TOSA positions have been an integral part of your getting the STEM program up and running. I don't doubt that. I'm sure that what they do is much more than what's on this paper even. But I was just concerned that I thought it was funded for 1 year. And I'm concerned about the future. I mean, we funded again this year. What are your plans for eventually, I mean, somehow you're going to have to incorporate it within your program without this, eventually. How are you going to do that?
Yes. I was hoping everything would be perfect on day one. And it is simply a huge project. I will share with you that I fully understand and appreciate and agree that we cannot implement forever. That there's an end to it, and then, once it's implemented, then you refine, of course. So I believe that we can fully implement or get close to what our goal was with another year of this. I don't think we need multiple years.
I also just wanted to remind everybody that we had a horrible fire this year, and that certainly has changed things across the district with what staff has spent time on. So anyway,
Yeah, definitely.
So are we looking for agreement to continue this for next year, or we're not?
Yes.
Are we going to make a motion and do that?
Yes.
So is there a motion to maintain the 2 FTE certificated TOSAs at Eagle Peak for 1 more year?
I'd like to think about it in conjunction with another proposal.
Which is?
But I'm just not sure about it, because it's an addition to, it's what I was mentioning earlier, is this the time to add things as well? So I'll just talk. So I think, I guess my thought is, I'm mindful that we said this is for 1 year, and then we're like, oh, it's actually going to be for 2 years, which is fine. I'm okay with that. And I think that it's a really important program that we certainly want to see succeed. I am mindful as well, though, that we do have another middle school with far more students that also has, we really want to succeed. And essentially, I think of this as, it's kind of like integrated extra professional development in a sense. It's like integrated extra collaboration time or something. I mean, if you just look at it like from a what is this that we're giving this school, what this school is able to take advantage of. And I'm wondering if we could offer a similar kind of experience to Pomalita as well on some of the priorities in that school, which may or may not be science. And it could be, I haven't thought about it further than that. And I don't necessarily mean that they would need to do extra release time. They've got more students. It might not come in the same form. But if we're offering one school integrated collaborative time to the tune of $160,000, would it make sense to offer something similar to another middle school that has a similar population with similar needs, and we want to succeed in the same way. So I'm putting that forward as a possibility for next year. One time, I'd say, 1 year to do some special integrated, whatever the equivalent is.
Trustee Nelson?
It's an interesting idea. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it. But I think that they are separate subjects. That if one feels more like parity and the other one is about continuing the funding of the school. And if it's okay with you, I think that we ought to focus on Eagle Peak and bring that subject up at another time. But that's just my humble opinion.
So,
I don't think this item, if we're voting, I'm not saying they have to be linked. I'm just putting that out there as a concept.
So I'm adding it to the board's
Yeah,
list.
it doesn't need to be a.
okay, so can we treat them separately then?
Sure.
So is there, Trustee Montpere?
Megan, you just mentioned something about funding for a year, and I thought what you had said was that this was included in the original funding that we agreed to for Eagle Peak, was it not? And that was a 3-year plan?
Correct.
I guess so.
No, we only agreed on it for 1 year.
Just one? Oh,
It's in the budget is in the strategic plan for 3 years.
yes. So is it 1 year or 3 years?
Katie, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. When we brought the budget in, I think it was December of last year, just the budget and the proposal, in that we had the 2 positions. The first proposal we had was 1 or 2 positions, and then we brought it back again with the 2 positions for 3 years. And so in the strategic plan, the budgeted amount for those 3 years includes the 2 additional positions.
So that's my point. We approved the strategic plan, which means we approved those positions for 3 years.
But that's not what you thought happened.
I think we're.
I just think that's important because we're changing the strategic plan if we do something about this.
I think we're maybe confusing a few things here, so I would like to suggest that if there's a motion to approve this, that we go ahead and approve this.
Well, could we clarify that first? I mean, it's included in my
So
concept.
the only reason we're talking about this is because for some time, at some point, there was a discussion of this particular function being for 1 year. It might not be the dollar amount. The dollar amount might have been holding steady throughout the years. Otherwise, I don't even know why it was on the list. I remember, like Trustee Barrett, that because this is different, this supporting the STEM TOSAs are not 2 additional people. It's restructuring the way teachers are teaching, which I'm not critical of, but it's something very different than just giving the district money. And I do remember that there was a discussion that this function of having teachers have different schedules was something that would be necessary for the first year, and we didn't think it would be necessary in the second year. I'm totally fine with it being, like, I'm fine to approve it. You learned it's really useful. We want to continue to support the school. I'm totally fine with it. But I, like Trustee Barrett, remember that the original discussion was we thought this would only be necessary for the first year, although we weren't for sure. That's my memory.
I just.
Okay, is there,
I thought, I mean, I don't mean to further
no,
confuse
go
this,
ahead.
but I thought, I remember a 1-year agreement to extend the hours of something. I thought that was the 1-year agreement.
I think we've had a couple of issues around this. One is related to a grievance with UTA that we've had a lot of discussion about. And there's the separate issue of this being in the strategic plan for 3 years. So I think that's why it's confusing right now. And, you know, we can't discuss grievance-related issues in open session.
But this particular aspect of the revisiting the 2 FTE certified TOSAs is in the budget.
It is in the budget.
So why are we approving it again if it's already in the budget?
because it came up last meeting that somebody wanted to take it off. So now we're looking at things
Oh,
that people
okay.
wanted to take off.
I did not get that. I'm
Yes.
so sorry.
So these are
Okay.
individual board members' ideas.
Okay.
And we're seeing if there's consensus or not. So
So
I'm wondering,
really, the motion would be
To maintain.
remove.
It's to
To
continue the
remove.
current structure.
to continue the current structure.
That's what.
Well, you don't, we're not voting on everything because everything else is being retained. We're voting on removing this because it's already there.
We can remove it
Perhaps
from
that
this
is
list,
semantics.
or we
I
can
will-
keep it on the other, both.
I will be quiet. Okay.
Is there a motion?
So is the motion to take it off the list so we retain, so we continue, or do I need to make a motion specifically that we
To
have
keep
two
it.
TOSAs?
We are recommending that you continue the current structure at Eagle Peak Middle School for next year.
I would like to make a motion that we continue the structure that we have at Eagle Peak in the following school year.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so another item that was brought up by board members, why are you giving me that wide-eyed look, Amy? Was to reduce staffing at UISA, the Family Community Liaison, and the TOSA.
Okay, you should have a recommendations page in front of you. So, the last time we met, we decided, these positions were brought up for us to look at. So we met with UISA staff, and got input from that staff. And then we came back and discussed it as with the administrators and cabinet. So our proposal is, if you look for administration to have no change in allocation, the two positions that specifically were requested to bring back on, the student success coordinator, we got input on what the student success coordinator was doing at UISA. And many of the duties we felt were not in line with the job description of the student success coordinators. So what we are proposing is to keep 0.25 of this student success coordinator. And then the other component of the position would be to keep 0.25 as a regular independent study teacher. And the reason for that is we have had people on the waiting list for UISA, and that ebbs and flows the amount of students, and specifically by grade level, because let's say a high school student comes and there's not high school room, but there might be room in K-8. But we really feel we want to grow that program. We've had both the administration and staff have said that that's an important piece. And so this is one way we see that we could do that with that position, because we don't want kids on waiting lists if we don't have to have that. The next position, the recommendation is to, when we looked at what the family community liaison, we felt like that position is much more needed at the high school. And so we are recommending that the family liaison be allocated to the high school. Some of the input that we've gotten on that is maybe that they could actually be housed at UISA since it's the same campus, or support UISA. There were some things that they did, like parent nights and some other parent outreach, that position could potentially still help UISA with. And then lastly, as before, what you approved, which was to reduce the secretary position. We are recommending that we eliminate the current position, and then bring the position back as an 11th month secretary, because we realize that the position as it is currently is a 12-month, but school would be out, and so we're bringing
Katie, I
that
just
back.
want to remind the board that the portion that you eliminated was the half-time. This position, this secretary position is shared between the District Service Center and UISA. You eliminated the half-time support that's to the Director of Alternative Education. But the position is 12 months, and all of our school site secretaries are 11 months. So after we did that, we realized we really need to eliminate the whole position and bring it back as an 11-month position, because that's what all of our other school sites have, is an 11-month position.
And when bringing the position back as 11th month, that would increase, instead of just being 4 hours a day, that would increase it to 4.5 hours a day. And that currently would not have any impact on the budget. So those are our recommendations.
Trustee Nelson?
just want to make sure, I want to make sure my mic's on. Initially, we bumbled into potentially changing UISA, having it close down the site, move to the high school and another elementary school. This
Change it
is,
from its own CDS code to, yes.
okay.
It's-
Are we
it's-
still working on that portion? Is this something in the middle where I know that we bumbled into it, we didn't even talk to the staff? How did these two processes work together, or are they separate?
So I have met with I met with the UISA staff 3 or so weeks ago, and our conversation was mostly around what is it that, despite like whether or not we have a CDS, its own school code, or it doesn't have its own school code, what things are most important to the school that are preserved. And so we had a discussion about that. We have not met again about that. UISA sent, we've started this shared Google Doc that UISA started to let us know what pieces are important. You know, they certainly want to keep all of the services and support that they currently have. And so we're still talking about the CDS code issue.
Okay.
And part of the challenge is timing on this. With the TOSA position, that's a certificated position. And so if we're going to not have it or reduce it, we would have needed it to bring it to the board tonight in a particular kind of service reduction. Although in this proposal, we're proposing that it still stay a 0.5, but 0.25 of it is student success coordinator, 0.25 of it serves students. So we really, if the board supports that, we really don't need the board to take action on that reduction tonight. And technically on the only other change, and Katie did not mention this, the thought on the family community liaison is, is that some of the duties of the family community liaison could still occur for UISA, like free and reduced lunch forms, parent nights. It would be more of a shared position with the high school, because we realize that the high school has 1,600 students and one family community liaison. And, you know, our other sites have fewer students, fewer families, and one family community liaison. So that was the concept, that UISA wouldn't get no services through that. They would get services through that position, but that position would also assist at Ukiah High School.
Okay, and then to clarify,
Correct, Katie?
Correct.
Okay.
looking at the recommendation, we wouldn't have to take action on the student success coordinator. We would have to take action on the family community liaison.
No, because it's right, it would go to the high school.
So we don't take action on anything?
You actually don't. We just want to know if you support. There's no, like, the staffing levels, although we'd shift some things around, they would stay the same. So you wouldn't actually, except for the secretary position, we would need to bring that to you in April, because we'd actually eliminate that position and bring it back as an 11-month position. So the board would need to take action on that component of it in April. But the rest of it, you wouldn't have to take action on. But we'd like to know if there's support, or you may have other ideas about what to do.
Trustee Mulgard?
So, for example, it looks like we received an email from some of the teachers. It looks like the family liaison does a lot of things, but one of the key ones, it looks like, is checking out Chromebooks to new students, making loaner Chromebooks available. And I know that in a big school anyway, that takes the first hour of the day, just to do those swap outs for people who aren't working, you know, whose computers aren't working, they forget them. I mean, literally, the people spend like the entire first hour doing that. Now, with less students, maybe it's less important, but would the secretary be trained to do that?
That used to be done by the secretary at UISA.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And maybe it's here and I just missed it, but could you refresh my memory? There are 100 students?
111, I think. I'm off the top
111?
of my head, 111.
And currently, this year, there are how many teachers plus the .5 TOSA plus the 1.0 family and community liaison? 5.5 teachers.
Isn't it 6?
For the half.
It's 6, including the halftime TOSA.
6.
Okay.
Community liaison.
And the community liaison is not a teacher, it's a classified position, and that's a
Right.
.5.
It's already a .5.
So we're proposing that we still leave the staffing level, the teaching staffing level at 6 FTE. We are just proposing that we reduce the halftime to a .25 for student success coordinator duties, and the .25 would be serving the students.
Do you have more questions, Trustee Mulgrad?
I'm sorry, I'm asking such a basic question. Does the attendance work the same way in terms of positive attendance?
It is positive attendance. The attendance is different than our comprehensive sites.
Okay.
And does somebody want to give more explanation than that?
Well, I don't know if I need, how are we doing on it, I guess is my question then. If it is different, maybe a number isn't going to make any sense to me.
We're doing well.
Yeah, our monthly attendance, I was just looking at those numbers today, you know, for the 6 months we have so far this year. 2 of the 6 were at 95%. And so the rest, we seem to hover around a 93.5% to 94.5% attendance regularly. But we are positive attendance, so when the students do the work, that's how we then accumulate their attendance.
Are there chronic truants, or are they more just people missing here and there, here and there?
Correct. We don't have a truancy process, if you will, because of the interventions we do. If a student is not performing, doing the work, and/or not coming to their appointments, we
Then they go.
intervention them out.
Right.
And counsel them out. So we don't
Right,
have a
so
truancy.
that's a way to just eliminate that issue, right? And people have to try to get in. They have to, you know, they have to say, okay, this is what I want, so.
Yeah, the goal is to analyze and through an intake process, not accept a student if we can predict they're not going to do well. So we
Right.
don't end up in those situations, yeah.
Which does lead me to think that you would need less per capita family and community liaisons than otherwise. Because so much of their work in a regular school is trying to get those children who are so unmotivated, and you don't have as many of those.
Yeah, I would agree. If we're doing a good job on the intake process, we
Right.
shouldn't have too many of those cases. However, we have found that the liaison's ability to be a part of the intervention system with just quick calls when we see the warning has made a big difference also.
Well, and adolescents are adolescents.
Can you speak into the mic, Holly? Otherwise, it doesn't get picked up.
Yes. I was just coming up here to re-emphasize that we just did some analysis, that our attendance went up last month by 4% due to the fact that we were using our family liaison pretty aggressively calling families. So it did have just this last month, had a pretty large impact.
And what did you specifically do to redirect that employee?
The teachers were notifying her directly to make the phone calls instead of going through the process where we were just waiting until the next meeting and then sending out letters. So we just made quick phone calls, and she was more convenient to do that. That's what we did.
How does 1 percentage point raise in your attendance affect your budget? Ballpark term, ballpark. Okay, all right. Basically, my question is, by redirecting her, did she pay for herself? I don't know if she's a she or a he, but.
And I don't have that information.
Okay, thank you.
to share out.
Trustee Yarkin?
So I'm wondering about the family community liaison again.
Yeah, you don't
So-
think you think.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this person would be housed at the high school,
Deb, at the high
right?
school. Deb?
They'd be housed between the high school and UISA. We haven't figured that part out yet.
Oh, okay. Okay,
But they
so-
could technically be housed at UISA for part of the time.
Oh, see, for part of the time,
Yeah.
and then back, and it's so the high school would have 2 full-time
No.
family, they'd have
This is a
one and half-
half-time position. The other
Oh, it is a
half-time is
half-time.
at South Valley.
Oh, that's right.
So they
Forgot
would
about
have a little bit of additional
So
support.
it's a, oh, okay, so it's a quarter. Ah, okay.
Okay, Trustee Van Sant?
And what is the amount of administrative time for UISA? Is that half-time?
Can you guys stay up so you can answer questions? Thank you. The question was, what is the allocation of administrative time at UISA?
The allocation funding is.
50%.
No, how many hours?
Oh, I would say my time now is spent more at the adult school compared to UISA. It was 50/50, but now the adult school needs and demands have drawn me over there more.
Okay.
So 40/60.
And is there a counselor that is assigned to?
That would be me. I do the
Okay, so
guidance
how many
counseling.
heads do you have for all these hats? I'm just
Let's see, what
curious.
day of the week is it?
The other thing that occurs to me is there any consideration for increasing the hours of the secretary even more than 4.5?
The board could propose that. It will be a general fund expenditure, but
Because I think even an hour more would, I don't know if that would be covered by the 1 month decrease, but at least there would be somebody in the front office to
so the way
do some things.
we did factor that in, Gail. When we go down to 11 months, we calculated the number of hours. So that's why there's an increase in a half an hour a
Mhm.
day to account for the 1 month less.
But since we're already paying benefits, I can't imagine it would be enormous, but I just think it's something that could be considered.
And that, just to follow up on the same issue, sorry, Chair Fernandez. But one of the needs was to have a greeter, so is UISA only open 4.5 hours a day? So there will be times then by doing the 4.5 that we would have no one at the front?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let's try, Trustee Van Sant.
Thank you. And I'm ready to make a motion in a moment. But I wanted to just start off by saying that I think UISA is really awesome. I was really impressed with the information, I don't know if it was last meeting or the meeting before, from the parents and the teachers. It was really, I know that they were here to advocate for what they thought was going to be a budget cut, but I saw it as this wonderful affirming, like, oh, wow, this is really a great school. So for me, it was a really wonderful outcome of that advocacy. So I'm ready to make the motion to approve this proposal, and I want to be clear why. I think, again, I'm really happy we have the UISA program. To me, this is a right sizing of staffing, which we do all the time in terms of like checking the ratio of students to teachers. We'll say, oh, you're overstaffed at that side, so we drop staffing. I mean, we do that regularly. We've done that at elementary school sites that suddenly are like, shoot, I'm going to have more combos than I wanted. I mean, this is not unusual behavior on our part to right size staffing to the number of students. So that's the concept that I'm coming here with. I think it got a little confused because we started talking about budget cuts for a while and then we kind of shifted gears. So for me, the way I'm thinking about this, again, it's shifting the ratios to be more appropriate to the number of students. And in doing that, shifting some of that extra ratio to sites that quite frankly have some really significant needs. I mean, when I think about, you just admitted that UISA doesn't have a chronic truant problem. So one of the things that the family community liaisons were supposed to be doing was working around chronic truancy. That's just that's not really relevant to UISA. So I'm really comfortable moving that staffing to the high school that does have a truancy problem and does have some significant behavior issues that UISA doesn't have to work with, and attendance issues. So I'd like to make the proposal that we do this.
Would you like to make a motion?
A motion, yeah, I'd like to make a motion, sorry.
And what's your motion?
My motion is that we approve the UISA staffing recommendations in recognition of what a fabulous program UISA is, and I think this is a good suggestion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any other comments before we
It
vote?
also gives me the floor. I don't think we need to make a motion to support this. It was my understanding at the beginning of the conversation.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Question mark?
We would like your
Yes.
motion to support.
Because it's a change.
All right.
Trustee Montpere, do you have another comment?
Well, I'm wondering if anybody else shares my idea about increasing the secretary time, and if so, at what point we would do that.
We could, if the board is interested in that, we could bring something back to the next board meeting. We could cost it out and come up with a proposal to bring back to the board if you would like.
Trustee Barrett?
I think this is adequate, and I was going to make the same motion that Megan did, so.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'll have you know that any opposed?
No, but I have to abstain because my studying abroad daughter is coming back and needs to do 2 years in 1 year and may very well end up at UISA. So this would have a direct effect on her, and I would prefer to abstain.
So noted.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is the board wanting us to bring back an increase in secretary time and cost that out and bring back a proposal?
I do not need that.
I do.
Barrett, no. Mulgard,
I have to abstain.
abstaining. Van Sant? Harkin? No. Okay, so there's only one yes there. I would say no then.
Okay.
So my schedule for tonight is totally not on track, just so you know. Start cracking the whip.
We're in
now.
trouble.
Let's keep going on this.
So you want to go back up to the top?
Yeah. So the first one, the create a reserve for the SCG, the recommendation is we hold off on that, but that we entertain this idea for next year?
Yes, it gives us a little bit more time to research. Penny's reaching out to other CBOs from other school districts to find out what they're doing. We want to make sure that by doing this, we don't potentially eventually reduce our funding for supplemental concentration grant funding. So we just need to do a little bit more research. And if the board does we do completely support the concept, partially because our supplemental concentration grant funds are so dependent on our percentage of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, and we've seen a couple of percentage point swings over the years. And so for that reason, it would be good to have some sort of reserve. And then certainly if the state budget goes awry and we have to have a reduction, we have a lot of staff funded through supplemental concentration grant funding, and if we didn't have a reserve, it could hurt us. But we'd like to do a little bit more research. We are not fully funded until 18-19 anyway, and so our thinking is that we would treat it, if we do establish a reserve, we would treat it like we do our regular reserve for the general fund, and we would work to get it up to a certain percentage based on unspent funding.
So is everyone comfortable holding off on that? No, Mr. Nelson?
I am a huge proponent of having a savings account for those hard times. My question is, I would prefer to see it done sooner rather than later. What is the timing in making this, what's the timing in making this determination, whether we do it 18 or 19, this year or next year, with the information that Penny needs to collect?
I think the biggest factor is we think we're going to get about $600,000 more in supplemental concentration grant funding, and right now we're identifying items, including the science TOSA, so we're about to spend some of that money. It would, if we decided to establish a reserve for next year, starting next year, I would recommend to the board that we not spend that funding or allocate that funding, but we would set it aside in a reserve.
So we have potentially close to $1 million that was unspent this year. And if I understood you correctly, another $600,000 might come up.
New money.
New money. It seems like when you're cash rich, it's a great time to start a savings account.
And my thinking was next year in the 18-19 unspent funding, that if the board wants to, if we're allowed to establish a reserve in supplemental concentration grant money, that we wouldn't come to you next year and say, hey, we have $500,000 of unspent money, but we would apply our reserve concept with that money and we would put it aside from unspent money next year.
Trustee Bonfair?
But if you did that, you would bring the figure to us, and we would still have a voice in whether or not to put it all in there. Or
Well, our current policy states that if we had, at the end of every year, when we have unspent money, we take half of it and put it into the reserve until we get to 9%. And then the other half we bring to the board for decision-making. So we're proposing, if we do that, we would, in 1920, apply that board policy concept to this funding as well, because currently it's just the general fund that it's applied to. So it just gives us a little bit more time to research and make sure we're not missing anything. And then we look at unspent money next year.
Trustee Barrett?
Well, isn't it, I'm thinking about what Katie said earlier, isn't it true that we can't save the money this year?
This year, that is correct.
Right.
Because we're not fully funded.
Right.
So that's what our recommendation is that we'd look to 1920 to get started on that.
Okay, everyone, do we need a motion? Yeah, you'd like motions? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we create a reserve supplemental. Actually, let me change this. I would like to make a motion that we postpone the decision on whether to make a supplemental and concentration grant reserve fund till 1920.
Is there a second?
I second that, and I just want to be clear that I'm supporting Tyler's motion and not the language exactly as written here for the
To
cabinet.
have it come back to the board?
Yes, I think there's
I
I
think
think
that's
there's more to
important.
talk about in terms of applying the exact same board policy. I'm not quite sure what that means.
So you'll bring it back before it's done?
Got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Create a science TOSA to serve elementary STEM and garden nutrition.
Just to clarify, that should say science and not STEM.
Oh, science, sorry. We talked about this last time. Are there any comments before? Trustee Nelson?
I know you're trying to get back on your schedule, but
It's not going to happen. It's okay.
inquiring minds. The science TOSA is that portion of this idea is to support the new standards that are coming into place?
Yes.
Okay.
And the garden and nutrition program and the science fair and other science academic competitions.
That was.
Any other comments? No? Oh, is there a motion?
I make a motion that we create a science TOSA to serve science and the garden nutrition program.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next is revisit behavioral specialist at Oak Manor.
So we have done some gathering of information on this. We are recommending that we continue the current structure because we've only had this position since the beginning of the school year. We were supposed to actually meet, Nicole was supposed to actually meet with some Oak Manor staff members today, and obviously we had to cancel that. So we have gathered some information, but we're not ready to fully present to the board on this yet. And this is a classified management position, so we have really another month to be able to look at this. But we would, because we've only had this position for a very short period of time, unless we see anything drastic, our recommendation is going to be to continue it next year.
Oh, Trustee Nelson.
So between now and next month, will you guys have a chance will you continue to collect that information?
So we've spoken to, we intended to speak with 3 people. I've spoken with 2 of the 3 people so far. And so I would anticipate, if between now and next month there's anything in particular you want to bring back, that would be helpful to know. We've gathered information on what sorts of things they've been doing, what sorts of things seem to be different than they were last year. But if there's something more specific.
I guess my only pitch is I wouldn't know what to ask for. We have tried all kinds of new things with supplemental and concentration grant money, although I don't, or is this general fund?
This is supplemental concentration grant funding.
Tons and tons of new things. Not everything can work. If this is a program that is not working very well or it's 50-50, then please come back to us and let us know. But I think it's really important that since we've been in this phase of spending lots of money and trying really some incredible things, not everything is good, and so we need to say it's hard to cut back on things that aren't good, but it's important.
I will say that from what I've gathered so far, it seems very, very positive.
Cool.
Trustee Molgar?
Of course it's positive. Who wouldn't want a behavior specialist at their school?
Fair enough.
I mean, so my question is, how are we measuring success?
That, well, we've asked some questions about that, and realized that we should have probably set something up at the beginning.
But I will
More
say,
specific.
this was a proposal that was brought forward last year from Oak Manor. They were experiencing some very,
Right.
very intense behaviors from students.
Mhm.
And so we should be looking at their suspension and expulsion rates, their attendance rates.
Exactly.
So that's what we will be looking at.
Well, we can even go backwards for that, since it's data that we don't have to create, we don't have to set that up prospectively.
Right.
So maybe even by the next meeting, we could look at
Sure.
a few simple measures.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Barrett?
My question, and I agree with trustee Mogard, I mean, everybody could use this help.
I want
And I just wonder, I mean, in the beginning when this position was suggested or put into place, in the back of my mind, I thought they would also be able to consult with teachers from other schools. And I don't know where I got that, I guess I made it up. But it just seems to me that rather than just have this position at one school that only serves one staff, that we ought to have something in place where this person could be called upon to consult with teachers at other schools. So if we're going to continue this position, I would like to see that done.
And Carolyn, I'll just add, we've been trying to collaborate with outside agencies and maximize Medi-Cal billing from the outside agencies to pay for these positions. The outside agencies would hire them, and they would work directly in schools. But there's some sort of issue with family therapy involved, and so we're trying to collaborate with outside agencies to get this going. So it doesn't cost the school district money, but these kids are served in the school setting. So I know Nokomis has been trying to get that going. So,
Well, let's keep that idea in mind if we
Yes.
continue this.
Trustee Van Sant?
I would make the motion I would accept Cabinet's recommendation to continue this current structure, but I feel quite strongly that we have an interesting experiment here. We have one elementary school that has an entire person extra devoted to behavior. And if we're not seeing any change in suspension rates, and we're not seeing any change in attendance rates, and we're not seeing any change in chronic truancy rates, that's, to me, is really good evidence that this strategy, we actually do have good indicators for this, for once. To me, that's really good evidence that this strategy might be flawed or need to be revisited. And one of the things I'm concerned about is my new idea that's coming from nowhere but my head, that when school sites have extra support, we have a counselor, we have a behavior interventionist. Are the teachers still taking ownership for the behavior in the classroom, or are they seeing it as somebody else's problem? And I just want to make sure that we are really emphasizing to our teachers that they are the most important thing, always, that their relationships with their students are supersede everybody else's relationships with students, because that's what the research shows us, that the teachers are the most important thing. And to me, this is an interesting experiment, because so far we haven't seen the results, and to me, that could be extremely telling and very helpful for us in moving forward in the strategies that we actually may not want to implement.
So you have a motion?
My motion is to continue it for a second year and come back in,
December?
no,
January?
wait, another
For a
year.
second year or for this year, and evaluate at the end of the year?
A second year,
A
next
second
year.
year, and in April,
Second
I would say in April, if we have not seen a significant change in behavior indicators, to eliminate the position.
In April of 2018 or 19?
Right,
2019.
another year.
Not next month.
Well,
Is
I
there-
still,
How about February?
I'll second
I
that.
was just picking a day.
I had questions before the motion, so is it possible?
There's a second, but now you feel free to make your.
Okay, my understanding was, I thought that there were going to be students assigned to that person.
They're not teachers.
Nicole, do you want to answer?
The person is not a teacher, so there's
Yeah,
no,
but-
there, so this person has gone into classrooms where there might be a student who's struggling, specifically non-special ed students, or a student who is maybe not yet evaluated for special ed, to observe the student, give recommendation to the teachers on things that they can do to keep the kid in class, rather than being sent out of class over and over and over again. And so one of the things that this person has done is gone and do observation and give feedback about those students. And so they're not a counselor, but they do talk to students, they do work with students. But
They do work with parents.
they also work with parents, but their job is really to make sure that the students can stay in the regular classroom.
Okay, my other question is, has that student population changed at Oak Manor in the course of this year, or is it stabilized? And how many students I'm just curious how many students in special ed that require intensive services there are at Oak Manor?
So this position does not serve special ed.
Right, they don't serve special ed.
Okay.
Oh, Trustee Barrett?
I want to see what results you're getting this year. I don't want to wait till next year, really. I want to see what the suspensions, if they've gone down, what kind of changes there have been.
I'll just say also in this particular position that is working so closely with teachers, establishing that relationship with teachers takes a bit of time. And we certainly can bring some data, but I am definitely in support of keeping the position for one more year because we've just started this.
That is one thing that we found that in our discussions about this, is that it took some time to gain momentum because it is such a personal thing that this person's doing, going and observing a teacher and giving the teacher feedback on what they can do as a teacher. And so it's taken some time to build that trust that person knows what they're talking about. So I think that this is something that probably in a second year I would hope to see that momentum maintained and maybe continue to increase. But I think that bringing back data we want to look at the data too.
Trustee Mulgrew, did you have another comment, or can we go?
Well, I just wanted to state that if it's not working, it might not only be because it's a bad strategy. I mean, the person might not be the best fit. And also, we have to remember that Oak Manor probably has the lowest poverty level of all of our counties, of all of our schools, and that they have students who travel from the farthest because they have students from Hopland. And they might even be the overflow school again. So they have a bunch of things that make it even more difficult than a regular elementary school.
When you say lowest poverty, do you mean
highest.
highest level of poverty, or what do you mean by lowest poverty?
Yeah,
You
the
mean
highest poverty rate.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, just want to
Yeah.
clarify.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there
Oh,
was,
she is totally cutting me off. Okay,
Well,
I will
I am,
stop
because, you know,
talking
this is
about
going on and
data,
on.
but I really had another 20 minutes to discuss data in
you can save it for the
detail.
next item, okay?
Okay.
So there was a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the next ones we have on here, you were recommending that we go with the strategic plan process. I personally would question the full-time communications person. If we wait on that, it's going to be June and there'll be no job description. So I'm wondering if that is one that we should consider now so that you could get the ball rolling on that?
Okay,
What do you think?
we can get started on a job description.
So is there consent, is there a motion do we want to go ahead with this full-time communications person?
I would move that we develop the job description, and I would say even begin the early steps of recruitment, because you can always not hire the person, right? I mean, but that process can happen with recruitment.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So
Okay.
move forward with
There
that
you
one?
go, you're getting close now.
Okay,
Can I ask one question?
yes.
The roles of the communication physician, it would be great if we could talk about it. I think that the board has some ideas of which direction that position ought to go.
So why don't you send me some email ideas,
Great.
and as we're gathering job descriptions, we would talk about it within the context of job descriptions, so we make sure it fits. But if you have any thoughts or ideas, just feel free to email them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so is there a motion to the other three items, the academic competition, the childcare for staff, and the in-school suspension, to process that with the strategic plan revision?
To what? I didn't.
So we have 3 items left, the providing funding for academic competitions, like Science Olympiad, Odyssey of the Mind, robotics competitions, et cetera. Provide childcare for staff through the Young Parent Program, and in-school suspension. The proposal is to process those ideas as we process through all of the other ideas that come forward for the strategic plan update. So what you'd get is, as you have gotten in the past, you'd get a list of all of the ideas that have come forward, and they'd be ranked by DAC and leadership, just for more information.
Trustee, not sure whose that is. Is that yours, Trustee Vincent?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I would like to ask that for the childcare for staff, if the conversation could be broadened to not just be childcare for staff, but, and this is going to sound heartless, but if we have 1 or 2 babies, is there another way to support those babies, not necessarily by having a full-time daycare center open for 1 or 2 babies? Can we support them at the sandbox, or make sure there's another way to support those babies? There seems like there should be a
There's
cutoff,
a cost
economy of
benefit
scale.
cutoff,
Yes,
yes, exactly.
So I think that, I'd like to see the proposal also be clear that we would eliminate that. We would support those babies in a different way if we didn't have enough of them. Does that make sense? What do you, okay.
Yes, I am not an expert in childcare programs.
Right.
And so that's why I'm looking kind of blank right now, Megan. So
Okay.
I don't know. I know there's been a proposal that has been put forward by First Five that we have been talking with them about for probably over a year, related to the sandbox. I need to follow up to figure out where we are with that.
I didn't even know they'd been talking about that. I just thought, if we have 2 babies, let's find a way to support them, maybe without opening and keeping open our own whole daycare center.
And
So-
remember that we laid that position off
Because we have no babies right now.
because we have no babies.
Which is a good thing.
Right, so
We
I'm
don't
just,
need babies.
I'm just afraid that
Don't
one baby
need
shows
babies.
up and we have a whole full-time person again, so I just want to make sure we're clear on what our threshold of babies is.
If
Because
there's
$90,000 a year is a very expensive childcare.
Yes. So anyway, I just would like the discussion to include that, if it needs to include a threshold.
Okay.
And the second thing I was going to suggest, that my concept, I would ask if the cabinet would process through the strategic plan revision the concept of adding integrated professional development time to Pomalita, if that makes sense to anybody besides me. If it doesn't, that's okay.
Okay, so we won't bring that back next month. Instead, it'll go through the regular channels.
It can go through channels. I
Okay.
mean, I'm happy to have that
Okay,
idea be
sounds good.
discussed with other
Perfect.
people.
Do you have a motion to make?
No, I'm not done.
Oh.
Are we adding things right now?
Well, we were making a motion to put these on to the strategic plan revision process.
The 3 items that the
Just
board
the-
hasn't taken action on.
Okay.
That we would consider those with everything else.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Did you want to make that motion?
Sure, I'll make that motion. So I'm making a motion that the funding for academic competitions, childcare program at Young Parent Program, and in-school suspension concept be processed through the strategic plan revision concept.
The expanded young parent program, which may include alternatives of off-site childcare.
Correct.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Was there something you wanted to add?
Yes. And then I want to backtrack to something Deb brought up in the very beginning of this discussion. I'm sorry, I know it's late, but this is important. So I'm interested in the concept for the strategic plan of exploring how our interventions for students with behavior issues, particularly those that are being suspended and expelled, we have rehabilitation plans for all our students that are expelled. I'm not so sure how well they're tailored to the students' individual needs, and if that's something we can support through the strategic planning process as a concept for supplemental concentration grant. If there are students who are being repeatedly suspended or students that we're needing to expel, how are school districts tailoring rehabilitation plans specific to those students? The same way we do reading interventions specific to the kid's specific reading issue, since this is a behavior intervention this child appears to need. I have no idea what that looks like. I just wanted to put that through
So
as an
do you
idea.
want that to come back to us next month, or do you want that to go through the regular channels with the?
I'm happy to have it go through the regular channels of strategic plan revision, because I think people who have a lot more knowledge than I need to think about what that means.
Okay.
Got it.
Something else?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to have the strategic plan process explore the concept of teachers being paid supplemental pay to actually call students about attendance.
Call parents.
Call parents, I'm sorry. I did read somewhere, and then I never found it again, and I have no idea, so this is why I'd like it to go through the strategic plan revision process, that parents resonate with teachers. And when a teacher calls a parent and says, your child missed how to read this book today, that has far more meaning to a parent than the school secretary calling them, or a robocall, or a letter. And I don't know whether that's, but I think that's extra time for teachers to spend on that ongoing deep parent support. So if that concept could be explored as well.
Okay. Anything else?
About this topic, or do I want to go back to the other thing that Deb brought up in the beginning?
Trustee Barrett, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, something I want to add. I've just been giving this a lot of thought, and Trustee Montpere is one who always talks about it, and I think she's right. The preschool issue, if we have money to spend, extra amounts of money coming in with the strategic plan, I would really like to look into what we can do to get more preschool students in. I think that's the way we really need to go to improve our reading scores. We've got to start early, and I would really like to, I don't know exactly what, but we need to do something.
And can that go through the regular strategic plan revision process as well? Or did you want that on, yes?
Yes.
Okay, got that?
Mhm.
Okay, Trustee Montpere.
I would just like to support Mrs. Barrett on
Okay.
that position.
Duly noted.
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Okay.
And I just want to make one comment, because I was looking at the cost of half-day preschool and then what it would cost just for all-day preschool. And I remember having a conversation with the superintendent saying that we don't want to apply for that necessarily because it doesn't cover the costs. But I think we have to begin to look at the fact that even if we had to supplement it, it benefits us in the long run.
Okay, so that's on your list, okay? Trustee Van Sant, did you have something else you wanted to discuss?
I did want to go back really quickly to the strategic plan cycle that Superintendent Cuban provided in the beginning. And I understand the message you're sending us about a 3-year cycle. But I also wanted to note that we did, the first year, unless I'm wrong, of our strategic plan was 15-16. Might have been,
No, I think it was before that.
it was 13-14? 14-15?
How long have I been here?
It was before I was on the board.
14, 15, because I think 13, 14 was the planning.
We'll have to go back
Okay,
and
so
look at that.
the 14-50, or perhaps even earlier.
I
So
think it was 14-15.
So, okay, so that further proves my point. If the first year was 14-15, we won't be doing a fundamental revision for 6 years rather than 3, because you're starting your 3-year now. So I think that's a long time to not substantively, I'm okay with the 3-year cycle in general, but I feel like we're being like, oh, now we're starting our 3-year cycle after we're in our 3rd year. So when I look at your schedule here, a substantive revision would not be happening until 6 years of our first one had already gone through. And that just gives me a little bit of pause. That's a lot longer to leave, that's a long time to leave a strategy if the strategy needs some real serious look. I'm not saying the strategy needs to be abandoned, but I don't want us board members to trap ourselves into later administration saying, yes, you agreed to do this for the next 3 years, and we'll be like, what, we didn't want it. So I'm just noting that.
We can still look at things, absolutely. It's just the law changed with the LCAP, and that's why, and it changed effective this year, that's why the 3-year cycle. But you can talk about anything at any time.
Okay, well, so I have that as a commitment.
Right, you can record.
We are all
Okay.
your witnesses.
All right,
Okay,
that's all.
Trustee Barrett?
Yes, just saw one more question that I wrote down at home. I thought, oh, yeah, I wanted to ask that. At one point, we had on our list to reduce the elementary counselors to 190 days.
Oh, yeah.
And that wasn't on anything else then that I looked through. I was looking for it. Since teachers work 180, and how many do they work, do counselors work now?
195.
195. So this was to reduce it to 190, and it was going to save $68,000.
You're right, we were going to bring that back and talk about it within this process. We can bring it back to the next board meeting if the board would like. They work 7 additional days beyond teachers.
What do they do during that time?
They reach out to parents, they do enrollments, they do, case review, they help have transition discussions between elementary and middle school, those types of things.
That would be important.
So, but we can talk with leadership more about it as well and bring something back at the next boarding. Thank you, we were supposed to bring that
For
back.
the middle school as well, or just elementary?
It was a proposal for elementary counselors.
But would you also look at middle school? And high school or not?
I wouldn't.
It was specifically elementary counselors.
Right, the secondary counselors are doing scheduling of students, and that requires more. But we can bring it back. We forgot. Thank you for the reminder.
Trustee Mulgard?
I will be brief, given that look. I just wanted to say 2 things. One is summer, and I've talked about this before, and I think we underutilize summer. And so I'm not sure what my proposal is about summer. I think we're all kind of pro-summer. But I think that we're losing an opportunity with some students. So I guess I would call it expanded summer school, but school is in quotations because I'm not sure that school is what's necessary for a lot of kids. A lot of kids might need something else happening in the summer.
Like driver's ed or typing, those kind of programs?
Exactly.
Okay, so
when their
summer opportunities.
when their parents can't afford it, those opportunities. And then the other thing I wanted to say is I'm still really worried about the construction industry and vocational training. And I see, Mr. Crawford just left. So I've talked to Mr. Crawford and Mr. Osland, but I'm just not really sure what's happening next year, because I know that a couple of our vocational teachers are leaving, and so I'm just not clear on what's going on. And I'm also not clear on if the program currently, the kind of intro to the construction trades is very successful, if we can set aside funding to do it another couple times, maybe even in the summer, and then maybe next year, because we all know, even before the fires, we were short construction workers.
Okay. So if nobody has anything they're dying to say, can we take a break? Okay, 10-minute break. Come
Can
back.
I say
Yes.
one thing with all of that?
Sure.
I just have one quick reminder, and these are all great ideas, and I keep reminding us when we're doing our strategic plan. We've talked a lot about focus, and so as we roll into this process with, and I've said this to every single group we've met, we just want to make sure that we're focused on literacy, math, attendance, suspension, expulsions.
Amen.
In my opinion.
Yes.
Do it again.
Yeah, I know, because Ms. Van Sant, did you not hear that down there, Van Sant?
No, I did not. Sorry.
So we are not going to be getting out of here at 9:25, which is what I was hoping. But if you just want to keep aware as we go through these next items of the time, perhaps if you hear a comment made by somebody else that you agree with, you could just say I agree and not restate the whole comment. Moving on for resolution number 14, 17, 18, calling for full.
So moved.
That's good.
I'd like to second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We just passed D3, resolution number 14.
Just asking for money.
D as in David.
Thank you, Trustee Van Sant. D4, discussion of enough, the National School Walkout on March 14th.
So the board requested that this we had board members request that this go on the agenda, and so there's some backup information, including a legal bulletin regarding student and staff walkouts, as well as the frequently asked questions from the event. We've had discussion about this at the leadership level. We certainly support safe schools and want to do everything. I think there were some good suggestions made by community members tonight about getting some community forums together. I'm going to pursue that. But I just wanted to make sure the board had the information from legal counsel regarding school district best practice on how to deal with student and staff walkouts and how we have handled it. And the legal recommendation is in line with what we've done in the past.
Comments? Trustee Van Sant.
I note that the legal advice recommends that school site administrators reach out to student leaders to discuss any plans for a walkout and to suggest ways to accommodate student interest in demonstrating that will be less disruptive of learning and instructional time. Have we reached out to students and found ways to direct them to appropriate ways to demonstrate?
I do believe that the high school is, the high school students, and I don't know all the detail, but I believe the high school students are planning something.
And is the principal or school staff in close communication with them?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure, but on the past, the principal worked really closely with the students. So I assume that will be the case as well.
So I guess from my viewpoint, I'm hoping we can explicitly encourage the administration to work with the students. I would really, really like us to be able to support the students in demonstrating about this issue in a way that does not break school rules. And I think with like very intentional work ahead of time, we can do that. So I'm really just hoping that that's being communicated to the school staff.
Is that consensus from the board that you would like me to direct our administrators to reach out to students on this particular day on March 14th?
Yes, for me.
I mean, I would certainly, I had thought we would have some information tonight about what might be planned, or do we know of anything that is planned, or?
I believe the high school student, there's something being planned by the high school students.
But do we know if it involves leaving campus?
To my knowledge, it does not involve leaving campus.
Okay.
I believe that they are having some student speakers in the quad.
Okay.
I don't believe that it's during break. I think it overlaps with break, but I do believe that the students are walking out of class. And we certainly will advise them that that's not a best practice, that we'd encourage them to do something during break, but they also have the right to express themselves. And the last time this happened on a different issue, the students who left class spent some time with Principal Oslin, talking about respectful demonstration and freedom of expression and protest, and it was actually a very good experience for the students.
Trustee Barrett?
I was just going to say, what I've heard is, yes, there is something being planned, and I think they are planning to walk out.
Off the campus, or?
No, not off the campus.
Any additional comments?
And in the past, we have received comments and complaints from the community regarding staff members being with students. We have an obligation to keep our students safe, and if they walk off campus, we will send a staff member with them to make sure that they're safe.
Okay.
It's tricky.
It is very tricky.
Okay, so do you have direction to talk with staff to see if you can encourage supporting stopping school violence without breaking schools? Sort of?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
We also talked about, reading the detail of this particular day on March 14th. It's a little bit deeper than when you read the frequently asked questions, it's a little bit deeper than just school safety. It mentions in there, among other things, not using law enforcement as a solution on our campuses. And I think we're all aware that we have 2 school resource officers on our campus. And so I think people are a little sensitive to that issue. And so we actually talked about maybe doing something on some different days, but it's really up to the schools. We've left it up to the school sites on what they're working, what students are wanting to work on with them. But I do know there is something happening on that day at the high school. I just don't have all the details. I've heard bits and pieces.
Are there any more comments? I know Trustee Mogart desperately wants to say something.
I am refraining.
Okay. Next, then, D5, advocacy for marijuana prevention and education.
So as you know, our suspension rates for marijuana are way up. And this year in particular, we've had multiple expulsions related to multiple incidents of individual students with marijuana use and possession. I know I certainly have an interest in, it's right here, Nicole. I'm like, that's not mine. I have an interest, and I know a couple of other board members have talked to me. I'd really love to engage in the community around this issue. I really see it as a community issue, and on the agenda, attached to the agenda, we're asking the board to approve a statement of support. And Tyler, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
I think actually Megan might be in a better position to talk about this, but I would like to say that I think that the school district has to be, frankly, I'm so worn out on this issue. I just want kids to know that don't bring your weed to school. I'm really tired of throwing kids out. It's kind of killing me. I hope that the rest of the board members are in favor of supporting this idea, and I think that we need to have a plan of how the district talks with the rest of the community, where we're going to find resources to help change the culture in the schools. So I think that this is a good first step, but I think that we need to continue the conversation so we have a plan of attack on how to find support for our district.
So this particular statement of support urges the Board of Supervisors to set up a Future Generations Fund so that 20% of the tax proceeds related to marijuana are set aside to support and benefit Mendocino County children. And so we're asking that the board approve this, and we would send it on to the group that is collecting these. I also plan to talk with the superintendents from throughout the county and urge their boards to do the same.
One additional comment that I might make, I'm sorry you got my brain finally working. The proposed 20% is, it's not a 20% ask for having the funds come to our school district or any of the other school districts in Mendocino County. Frankly, I think it's more important that that 20% is in our community to either be used by the schools or whatever the most efficient use of those funds are to, again, help change the culture of what's going on in schools. So even though this money isn't necessarily promised to school districts, I certainly think that it's important for us to support it and let the Board of Supervisors know that while their initial, how they're splitting the funds initially, that the way they did it initially is flawed. They forgot about the kids and how much it's impacting our districts. So.
Trustee Vanciac?
I'll just provide a little bit of background on the initiative as well and what the plans are. The group of people who are supporting this concept are recognizing that the setting aside 20% by 2020 may not happen through just a request to the Board of Supervisors. So their next step is to request that it be placed on the ballot for voters to vote for it, if that's something that the voters would want to approve. So I think that's possibly one direction where this initiative is heading. And just to be clear, the request by this group is not an additional 20% tax on cannabis businesses, but 20% of the taxes that have already been established be dedicated to children. And I think, again, I'm going to speak for the group who's promoting this. The concept is that although the funding is welcome, it's really about emphasizing the impact of marijuana on children and the concept of caring about children and recognizing that the marijuana culture in our community has not always had a positive effect on children. I would argue has had a decidedly negative impact on children overall in this community. And the concern, which I think we're seeing in our schools, is that through the legalization process, the messaging children have heard is marijuana is safe and legal. That's what they hear and that's what they believe. And it's not safe and it's not legal for children. And so we're having to combat that message. And this statement is is just one of many ways to try to accomplish that goal.
So is there a motion to recommend this statement of support?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the 17-18 second interim budget report.
I'll try to run through this quickly, but as always, if you have questions, let me know. I want to acknowledge Katie Aguilar, Director of Fiscal Services, Christy Bryant, our accounting manager, and Lynn Adams, our account coordinator, for their outstanding work on our budget work. And Christy in particular is a position control expert for UUSD, and they do a tremendous job. So I want to acknowledge that and thank them. Here's our agenda. There's quite a bit on here, but I'll just get started. This is the typical budget LCAP reporting cycle, so that we started with adopting the budget in July of last year. Now we're in March and are looking at the second interim budget report that takes a picture of our budget as of January 31st. The three purple circles are this year's reports. The yellow one was when we closed the books for last year, and then the green ones indicate next year. So we've already had the governor's budget proposal in January for 18-19. In May, we'll have the May revise, and then in June, we'll adopt next year's budget along with the final look at this year's budget with the estimated actuals. This is something from School Services, and it just shows the LCAP life cycle, and I put it in here because it flows with the local control funding formula as well. And this is not something new. You guys have seen this before. So basically, what's important to understand in our second interim and our budget assumptions is that our revenues and expenditures change throughout the year, and that when we build our budget, we look at the board goals from the LCAP and strategic plan, and that's what serves as the driving force in how we allocate our resources. That ends up being all the details of our budget. Specifically, our local control funding formula based on average daily attendance and our unduplicated pupil percentage, which is what drives our supplemental concentration grant funding, we continue to grow. Our adopted, we're up actually 47 ADA overall since budget adoption. The amount of increase from first interim to second interim was an additional 14. And the unduplicated pupil percentage, the UPP, just changed very slightly, like 0.1%. And then also it's important to remember that any of our restricted programs are to be self-funding, meaning that they adjust as revenues adjust, they'll adjust the expenditures accordingly unless there's contributions from the unrestricted side, and specifically and mostly to our special ed program. This is this year's, from the December report to the March report, the difference in our local control funding formula. And the biggest number there is the total. So because mostly due to the 14 additional students, ADA, and if you'll notice that gap funding, it went from 43.19 to 44.97. That, in combination with the additional students and that little bit of difference in UPP, gave us almost $190,000 more this year. And then that split out into the two pieces, the base grant and the SCG. And that's what equals the 189. So this looks at next year's 18-19, and we had numbers at first interim for the two subsequent years. And you'll notice that the change from first interim, the second column to the third column, first to second interim, we went from that gap funding where the arrows are pointing. So before the governor in January decided that he was going to fully fund the local control funding formula, if that's what happens when we actually enact the budget, before he leaves office, he'll be fully funding to the target, which puts us back to what, 2008 funding levels. But another piece or another bit of information that occurs once we reach that 100%, then the Department of Finance will only estimate COLA increases, because once we've met our target, then that's the only additional money at this point that we would get. And that with being a new governor in 2019, we can't assume that there will be additional beyond COLA until that happens. Hopefully, of course, it will. Two other new elements are that requiring districts to show how their budget expenditures align with their LCAPs, and with us it's the strategic plan that's the same as the LCAP. But that's where it's like, great, because we are very good at this. I mean, incredibly detailed. Katie and Christy work on that a lot. Of course, Katie Aguilar. We have everything tracked very efficiently for all of our supplemental concentration grant funding. The other piece would be a website that CDE will put together, and whether it be on the CDE website or not, but it'll show every school district's LCFF amounts and the amount of their supplemental concentration grant. So that wouldn't be for us to do, I don't think, but they'll do it. But that's something they're coming up with. This is a look at our unrestricted general fund, and it shows the three different reports up to the second interim. So I included adopteds just so we could see the differences. But the actual final column shows the difference from the December report to the March report. And at the bottom in the green, you can see from where we started the year with the estimated reserve percentage to where we are now. And, a lot of different reasons why that's changed, but a lot of it was our additional students and then the gap funding changing, and, just there's a lot that goes into that. So this is starting that if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, the 309, 362 is the difference in the revenues. And if you look back here up at the top on the last column, that 309, 362. So I'm going to be giving you details of each of those major changes so that you understand why we the budget is what it is at this point, and we're asking you to approve it. So, again, there's that 189, the LCFF, and then just various different, you can see them, nothing too surprising. We don't usually fund or budget impact aid money until we receive it, so we've received another $45,000 there. On our contributions, which I thought I had, my expenditure should be next. That difference overall is just $103,000 on 50 million, so you know, a negligible amount of change there, really. Just going through the contributions. Now, this looks like a lot of changes, but what it really is that back here, whoops, wait a minute, where am I? There we go. If you look here at the first interim column, and you go down to below the ending fund balance of 822, you see other assignments. At first interim in December, we had the $721,000 in one-time money sitting in the ending fund balance. And then after after the board approval, we moved that with, if you see the negative amount of the technology infrastructure, that was the over budgeted amount once we saved money on that. So that negative amount plus that 721 equals the 792 and the 506 that were approved to be added to textbook adoption and deferred maintenance. And so then really the big change here is another $205,000 being contributed to special ed. And that amount is broken out at the top. And basically it was additional students in the SDC. And what happens is we used to transfer it over in a little bit different manner for accounting purposes, but now you do have to identify that those SDC students are also regular ed students as well. So that amount that would be attributed to their regular ed gets transferred to special ed. So that's what that is, because we have more students designated in that area. And then almost $50,000 in salary benefit adjustments, which is not a whole lot considering the entire amount of the program. I already talked about this one. This is our transfers out, and we were able to increase our reserve fund 17 by $169,000, and that's just getting all the unallocated moved over. The other is just small changes. It was a reduction to adults in corrections, and sometimes there's a lag in the funding for that. So we try to keep that in balance, but sometimes the needs will be higher than what the prior, I think it's prior year funding than what we get. So next year we'll probably get more. Just a small amount of change to the cafeteria fund. And then I'm not positive on the bus replacement. I would expect that this is money that was beyond the grants for the 3 electric buses that were fully funded by the grant money. But this could be for their radios, docking state. Oh, the infrastructure. Okay, it may have come in a little bit over the grant amounts. Okay.
Was actually, so we could.
Gabe, can you come up to the microphone, please?
You have a loud voice, but it's not that loud.
Carries to the room, but not really.
And it's only $1,600, so I
So
don't know
we're
how much
okay.
time we need to spend explaining it.
Very quickly, it was actually for tinted windows on the buses because that is a standard in the district. There's a safety issue for glare and also so people can see it. So, and the state did not want to cover that cost.
We'll take it. So here's the multi-year projection, looking at just this report, not a difference from first to second, but this report and then the 2 out years. So what's really, really important is to see that yellow line. We show that The amount that we need to balance our budget next year and the second year out is very minimal that we would have to use from Fund 17. As you'll recall, those were big amounts earlier this year, and we were looking at the need for budget reductions. And so what we do not have included here is any amount of salary increase for next year for our employees. However, as I believe everyone's aware, we do have an MOU in place with our teachers union for a salary compensation formula. So it's really important to know that that was just the revenues and expenses. This is the fund balance on the multi-year. So while at the bottom, these percentages look much improved in these out years, again, there's no salary increase included. So when we put that in there, those two out-year percentages will reduce. And we will know the amount in October when we true up this year's salary compensation formula based on the actuals, and we estimate next year's. And when we saw all that additional money that the governor's proposing, then we will expect that there would be, based on what we know right now, a salary increase. So basically, just if we wanted to go through and look at what we've done with our structural deficit that I was just talking about, the board has approved $257,000 in expense reductions effective in July. We'll be building that into the next year's budget, and it is included in our multi-year projections right now. So this is me again talking about the MOU. And so in the bold at the bottom, when the amount of salary increase is known, if any, in October, the reserve percentages will decrease. And it could very well be that we would require additional budget reductions. So things that we need to be aware of on the horizon and that will cost us money is our ongoing pension increases, the increase in percentage year over year. We have the minimum wage increase that affects a lot of our classified employees. We have escalating labor costs to repair facilities, and sometimes those are quite costly. We have school safety, additional needs to make our schools even more safe than they already are. And then, of course, our ongoing additional facility needs identified in our facility master plan. So we have been talking about our general fund, which is the main operating fund of our district, but we have other funds that house specific programs and are legally dedicated to those purposes. This is the difference throughout the year in those. You'll see that increase to the reserve fund, the $169,000. On the capital facilities, I've noted that we did receive $310 in additional community development funds. That's what's going to be funding the additional South Valley budget for their site improvements, and then some other adjustments there. So we're already to the next steps, you guys. So the May governor's revise of next year's proposal, and then again, like our budget cycle showed with the circles, our estimated actuals for this year and budget adoption for next year in June, along with we'll adopt our LCAP and the budget in 2 different meetings. And then sometime in June, the governor should enact the state budget. And then in October, we'll true up with our salary compensation formula and estimate next year's compensation formula, add those together and see where that takes us. So we would recommend that the board approve the second interim budget report and budget revisions contained therein with a financial certification of positive. And that's it.
Trustee Vincient?
I move approval of the second interim budget.
Second?
I'm afraid I was going to say something else.
I wonder why.
Not afraid, just anticipating. Was there a second?
I did.
Were there any comments or questions?
I'll just comment, things look good. Thanks, Penny. We've got a lot of money and more money on the horizon and more expenses on the horizon. Sounds great.
Thank
Trustee
you.
Arkin?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Penny, thank you and your staff. It is so nice after these many years of not so positive things to keep seeing these ratings as positive and how nicely you do it, and I want to thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I concur.
Yes, I think we all concur on that one.
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Penny. Next is Resolution 15, 1718, reduction or discontinuance of certain certificated particular kinds of service for the 18-19 school year.
So before Nicole speaks, I just wanted to let you know, we've updated this document from your discussion based on the LCAP. So we're proposing, and so Nicole is going to go over that with you.
So the first thing on that list is to eliminate 1.0 FTE teacher resource nutrition. It reflects the discussion that we've had regarding the garden program and nutrition program. Later on in the agenda, there is a job description that is for science TOSA, and that also includes garden and nutrition duties within that job description.
And I'll just make it clear to everybody, although we are eliminating this position, the board took action to bring back a science TOSA position, and so it's just a different position. So
Is that an automatic change for that, whoever's in that role?
No.
Because it's a new position, both this position and number 4 on here, which is the teacher for GATE,
It'll be opened up,
those will both be opened up with
but
the,
internally open?
yes, with the new job descriptions.
Okay.
We don't have the job description yet, do we?
They're in your packet.
Oh,
for
yes,
approval
yes, I
tonight.
remember.
Yep.
The next thing on your list is a 1.25 TOSA SSC position. I think that earlier in the discussion regarding UISA, which was a 0.5, and the discussion is now to make that a 0.25 and keep the other portion of that as regular independent study instruction. I think the best practice would be to actually eliminate 0.25 of that position. So that's why you have a 0.25 here.
It will not result in any layoffs, though.
That is correct. It's just a changing of how it's classified.
And then the other piece of it is we have like an old position at Ukiah High School. It supports English learners. That position is being vacated. We've only had it for half of a year. And so just as a precaution, we're going to eliminate that position as well.
That will not result in a layoff either. That was a temporary position. It was a temporary contract.
We're doing a little cleanup with this.
The next item on there is 1.0 teacher academic support. That was a position that was not intended to last beyond this year. That also will not result in a layoff, so that we're eliminating that.
Remember that that's the position, we intend to have a counselor at Eagle Peak in that position, but for this year only, we had a teacher in that position.
Correct.
But we do not intend to continue that.
And then lastly, we have 1.0 teacher on special assignment, the GATE teacher. We have also later in the agenda
A new job description.
A new job description, sorry. Speaking is hard at this point in the night. It's for GATE Mesa, and so that is similar to the nutrition TOSA. One job's going away and another job's coming up. It will encompass some of the same duties.
And just to clarify on that position, on the back page, it still says 7.5. That should actually say 4.25 full-time equivalent. That reflects the decisions that you made during the LCAP discussion. So we're going to correct that.
I would like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 15 as amended on page 2 from 7.5 to 4.25.
Second that.
Trustee Arkin, did you have a comment? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have, oh, yes. We have the California School Board Association Delegate Assembly ballot with our very own write-in candidate. Let's give it up to Mr. Nelson.
Any questions about this? Trustee Nelson has expressed an interest in being a write-in candidate on this ballot, and we would like the board to make a motion to approve that as a write-in candidate. We're also working with some other districts to do the same.
I so moved.
I wholeheartedly second.
Yes.
So do we write, we're not writing his name in now, we're just.
We will be writing his name in.
Writing it in.
Yeah.
Two different actions. First, nominate him,
Oh,
and then,
Okay.
is there a nomination for Tyler Nelson for the Delegate Assembly Subregion 1B?
I so move.
I continue to second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now, Ann, was that you who moved? Oh, yes. Is there a motion to write in candidate Nelson for subregion 1B?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So do we also have to vote, or are we done?
We just voted.
You just
We
voted.
just voted.
We vote as a whole board for him?
Yes.
Yes.
And we will mail
We
in
only
the
get one vote? We only-
ballot.
do we get 7 votes?
You only get one vote.
I know, it's kind of cheated, isn't it?
That's a good idea.
Okay, good luck.
Good luck,
Good
Tyler.
luck.
Yes.
very weird sitting here having you guys talk about me, but.
We have two first readings, one on charter school authorization and the other on suspension and expulsion due process. It's a-
These are first readings just with update in the law regarding these two topics. If you have any feedback for us, let us know, or you can email it to me before it comes back to the next meeting.
Oh, trustee Montpere?
I just had a quick question. When I was reading through that, it talked about an administrative charge to charter schools. Do we charge that?
We do. There's an oversight fee of, is it 1%, Penny?
Yeah,
1% of their budgets for special ed.
Okay.
Oh, they do. So if they don't have special ed students, they pay us? What's the?
No.
Can you just tell me what that means?
It's based on. It's been a while since I've done the calculation, but the special ed, we look at the entire amount of contribution that we have to make to the program, and then we add our ADA and then their special ed ADA in and divide it out, and they pay their percentage.
Okay, any other comments? Okay. Parent and community partnership, superintendent's report.
Certainly a lot going on, a lot of really great things, but I'll just make one comment, just a report to the board on the K-9 visits. We've had, from UPD, we've had 33 visits since the fall. Recently, we've had 2 visits to South Valley, 3 to Pomalita, and in the month of February. We've had one issue that resulted in concentrated cannabis discovery. And so we are still working with the Sheriff's Department. They are planning this month to do 2 visits. It's just they've had some complications with some, community issues, but they're on track to get started. And they're actually going to videotape the dog in action and play it for students as well. So they're going to be bringing 2 dogs to Eagle Peak. And I don't want to announce when that's happening, but just know that it will happen very soon.
Trustee Nelson?
I'm excited that we're moving forward. Is this, do you feel that we're having enough visits, or should we look into working with this other company to supplement what our community can provide us?
I think we're okay right now as long as we get the sheriff's department going. They're fully committed to us, so.
Okay. All right. And the sheriff's department seems like they're on board. They're excited
Yes.
about it?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yep. The only other thing that I wanted to say.
Could I real fast? Trustee Mulgard, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm just confused. Oh, were you saying that there have been 22 visits since when? Sorry.
There have been 33 searches between Ukiah High, 3 at in the last month, there have been 3 at Pomalita, 2 at South Valley, and then we did use the dog at Frank Zeke for an issue that we had there. That was not necessarily a search of classrooms or backpacks, but we did have an issue there that we needed to deal with. And so I feel very confident and strong that since our December meeting, Ukiah Police Department has really stepped up the number of visits to our schools. So I feel really great about that.
Well, I'm glad that you're feeling great. I don't understand how it's possible that only one situation of concentrated cannabis was located in 33 and 3 and 2, so that's 5, in 38 visits? I think I'm not understanding.
If you would like me to get more detail, I can. They don't do the entire campus every time. They might do like the PE lockers, they might choose 3 classrooms. So they're not, at Ukiah High especially, they're not doing the entire campus every visit. So, but I'd have to get more detail into the 33 searches in terms of where they went, what classrooms they went into, and all of that.
Well, I'm afraid that that's not a good enough record for any student to be discouraged from bringing cannabis onto campus if they only found one item in 38 visits.
Could they also, every time they come, could they do the parking lot? I mean, but.
I don't know. I think it's the
So,
data.
so the direction from the board was to do 2 visits a month per school site. So I'm telling, UPD has done more than that. We're still getting things going with the sheriff's department, but they're fully committed to us, and we should hit that target this month.
Okay, the more important target is how many discoveries are made. So I guess I would like more data on that then. What are they finding?
Because wouldn't it be wonderful if they stopped bringing it, you mean?
Right.
Is that what you're saying? That it
Well,
doesn't
that's the
quite
whole
seem
point.
real, that they're already not bringing marijuana.
Right, that seems unrealistic, so.
Nice, but unrealistic.
Right.
I think it's an important point, because we've certainly had a large number of suspensions related to marijuana since December. So we know the marijuana's on the campus. And if the dogs aren't finding it, then either the dog is underperforming or the strategy, or I guess it'll be hard to tell. So I guess we need more data to find out what's going on.
It will be hard to tell because we've also done a tremendous amount of communication. My head is not in the sand, though, to say that, wow, we've done so much communication, and so we've only had 1 since then. But if you'd like us to come back and do a report to the board and have UPD here, we can do that at the next board meeting.
You know, quite honestly,
I'm not sure UPD and public is right. I don't know if that's the right.
I wouldn't mind a very brief report from them so they can continue to hear how important this is to us as
Right,
a
that
reminder
would
that.
be good.
And I mean, I guess I would hope that either the children are not bringing marijuana to school anymore, which would be the best possible outcome, or there's an underperforming dog, so we want to make sure it's the one we want. But I think it would be good to have UPD here, very brief, maybe just maybe they could bring the dog. And
You looked at me, huh?
well, no, I was telling you because I know you'll want it to be brief.
No, I'm fine staying here.
We don't
all-
need to
all
talk a long
night.
time, but I think it's
Totally.
important to keep that communication going. It's important for the public to see that this is an incredibly important issue to both us and UPD.
And I guess I'd rather have the, in addition to that, I would also like our report attached to the TGIF. I don't necessarily want it to be public until the issues are worked out.
So
Although
you
I
just
do
want-
understand that everything is subject to a public record.
So wait a minute, so are you suggesting, trustee Mogard, that we don't necessarily want to draw too much attention to the frequency of the visits because we don't want kids?
Exactly. I don't really want to advertise the frequency nor the results
So
at
then,
this point.
if that's the case, if we have a presentation from UPD, it is going to be doing that.
Well,
So
I
should
think
we
it could
hold
be
off on that?
vaguer. I think it could be vaguer.
But it won't, because people will ask specific questions.
Can I suggest we leave it to the superintendent's discretion on how to include the UPD at our next board meeting in a way that would be appropriate and useful?
Well, we could keep talking about it for another 15 minutes, or leave it to the superintendent's
So
discretion.
could we instead have it in a report form and then at a later point, think about having it be UPD?
Let's have UPD and the dog show up sometime between now and the end of the year.
Well, that's like 2 months away, but.
Time
I'll
will
leave it to your
fly.
judgment.
So I'm a little bit confused. I just want to be clear. So I heard that we're doing a report, but then I heard that we're bringing them here. So I'd love to just know which way.
The report within 2 weeks, the dog by July.
The dog?
The dog and the UPD. In person.
Do we have to pay the dog overtime?
That's what I would leave to the superintendent.
Well, I think she is looking
just
to
asked
you
for
for guidance. What is the will of the board? Do you want a
Is there-
presentation?
I prefer that we do a written report to the board.
Yeah, is there a reason to bring a dog at 6:30 in the evening? What is
Do
he gonna
dogs
do?
care?
I mean, what's gonna happen with the dog? I mean, they can give us a report without the dog.
I think
I'm
what
not
she's.
requiring the dog to be there.
You
I
want the dog?
No, I'm not requiring.
I
Oh,
think
okay.
what trustee Van Sant is saying is that she's hoping to let the UPD know how important this issue is to us. And rather than it having to go through superintendent, it would be a direct communication. Is that correct?
Yeah, let's get a report first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't this Superintendent Cuban's suggestion? Would you like UPD
Well, I
to come
think
here and talk here?
I'm trying to get some direction
Yeah.
from, this is just my report, and I was reporting out, and then you had some more questions. So
We took over.
this is not on the agenda. If you'd like me to bring it back on an agenda, I'll be happy to, or I can just give you a more detailed report.
And then we can decide.
How about we start with a detailed report, and
Yeah.
then after you see it, if you'd like it on the agenda,
Perfect.
send that email in.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Okay, did you have the rest of your report?
Yes. The second thing that I just wanted to talk about, and Terry touched on it, I think you all know that we lost one of our amazing teachers and at Oak Manor. It was an incredibly hard day today, and I am so incredibly proud of the staff, especially the teachers who were in the classroom that lost one of their very, very dear friends and colleagues and had to turn around and be there for the kids. Not a single one of them went home. They were there for the kids, present, and we have an amazing staff and amazing teachers, and I just want to acknowledge them and acknowledge the loss of just an amazing, amazing teacher of ours. And it makes life feel very short, and a lot of things feel somewhat insignificant compared to that.
I just wanted to share that I already had received an email from a teacher at Oak Manor who thanked Deb and Nicole for being on campus and said that the district really made it as good a day as she could have hoped it was.
Okay. Are there any board members' reports?
I have some.
Trustee Barrett?
I'll make it very short. Last weekend was the semifinals and the finals of the mock trial. And I just want to share with you how incredible our students are and their coach, Matt LaFavor. It was just astounding. They were so good. and they won they got to go to finals, which is, I think, the first time in quite a while they've made it to finals. And so they lost to Laytonville, but
Of course they did.
it was
Of course
very,
they
very
did.
close. I really thought they had won, but it
Laytonville
was
is on a
very,
roll.
very close. Well, it's a class. Our kids do it as an extracurricular
Well, yeah, no, I was just talking about the
activity. I know.
basketball. I mean, it's like poor Laytonville, who never did anything, is now.
Anyway,
always do well
they
in
were
that
great,
trial.
and I just had to say, of course, I'm a little prejudiced.
And Zoe, I'll also add, I went to Science Olympiad last week, and Pomalita's team took so many medals, and I believe they got moved on to the next level in a couple of weeks. And it was, we had a high school team, Pomalita and Eagle Peak. We had about 40 kids there and their families. It was just neat to see us so well represented in Sacramento. Principals and I were texting all weekend just about everything that was going on, and our kids were super busy last weekend.
Yes.
A communications person would have had front page news with pictures about that. Just wanted to point that out.
Next year.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have planning. Want to go ahead and do that?
On Tuesday, April 3rd at noon.
Ooh. So let's see, last time it was trustee Van Sant and Arkin.
I haven't been since December. So
Okay.
I offered last time, I'll offer again.
If you don't mind, I will work with Carolyn. I'd like to get my volunteer hours in
That's
soon, before I check out of life for
Oh.
5 months.
So that would be trustee Nelson and Barrett. And then the next one will be trustee Montpere, if you're around.
And that was April 3rd at noon.
Agenda planning. Anything else, Debbie, that we?
Well, just a reminder that we have a special board meeting on Monday, March the 12th at noon. And then the governance workshop follow-up with Steve Zweiback, April 4th at 5:30.
Wait, what was that?
Can you
say that
come?
again? April 4th?
That's on my calendar, it's amazing.
It's your wife.
It's the same night as
Megan, are you a
Reese's
yes
open
on that,
house.
you think?
Do you think I am?
I don't know why you wouldn't be, off the top of my head.
Yes.
You have no
It's not one of my
birthdays,
children's
no,
birthday
that's
that
what
I
she's,
forgot.
that's what she's really asking.
So then that's confirmed.
I will not be here on the 12th at noon.
But you will be on the 4th.
I thought you said 3rd.
No, the 4th, Wednesday, the, when, just, Ann, you can come on the 4th,
Yes, April 4th, 5 to 8.
5:30? What time does it start? 5:30?
5:30, yeah.
It is
5:30,
now
not 5, right?
permanently on my calendar. Got it.
Carol, the 3rd is also required to report.
Oh, the third should be.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this meeting is adjourned, and now if we want to just jump straight into the next. We have a, no, sit down, Tyler.
Yeah, we
Where are
don't
you
have to
going?
go anywhere.
We have a special meeting tacked on.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Do we need to do roll call?
Deb, can you do roll call?
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this agenda for the special meeting?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So quick history lesson, the board requested that I form a subcommittee to look at the Redwood Valley Elementary property. We met, we have some next steps for the board to consider, some action steps. And Penny, could you review those four things?
It's to authorize administration to negotiate a contract with Laco and Associates to prepare a general plan amendment and rezoning application. Authorize administration to request funds and/or grants from community organizations for soft costs to fund the general plan amendment and rezoning application. Thirdly, to authorize administration to issue an RFP for a consultant to prepare real property analysis and strategy assessment and report. And then fourth, authorize administration to provide notice to priority public entities identified in Ed Code 17464 and Government Code 54220. And I would expect that notification would be after we get the report from the consultant.
And just a reminder, Tyler and Ann attended that meeting with us, and so those are the recommendations from that group in terms of next steps related to the Redwood Valley Elementary property. So it just gets the ball rolling a little bit more.
And I would like to thank them very much for doing that work so that the rest of us can just sit here and take your recommendations. I really appreciate it.
It was much easier to do in a smaller group.
I bet.
It really was. And thanks to Steve Dennicliff from the county who helped us. And so that was great.
So are you continuing on? Yes.
Ann and I are so
Ann,
smart that we will continue to bring you awesome recommendations.
Great. Is there a motion to approve this awesome recommendation?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we need to reconvene in closed session real quick. We have one item to talk about.